Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Wednesday, June the 26th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, David Williams. He's produced the program. We are looking forward to speak with you this morning on a topic of your choosing. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So the last time Canada beat a South American team in soccer was back in 2000 when we beat Colombia 2-0 in the CONCACAF Gold Cup final. That streak has now been extended when Canada beat Peru yesterday. Canada had gone 391 minutes without scoring a goal until Jonathan David last night in the 74th minute knocked one in and we get a 1-0 victory over Peru. It's also, of course, our first win in the Copa America tournament period. And now we've got Chile in a couple of days, a result there in through the group stage. So that'd be absolutely brilliant. So it was a scorcher yesterday. I think it was 32 degrees when they took to the pitch yesterday in Kansas City. So way to go, Canada. A 1-0 victory. Absolutely brilliant. All right, and sticking with soccer, a fair number of emails, people asking legitimate questions about, how did we arrive at a point when the Newfoundland and Labrador government decided to sponsor a 4th Division United Kingdom soccer team? It's a fair question. I'd like to know who approached who. You have to think that the government saw an opportunity and went and approached Barrow AFC. So $171,000 over the course of 2 years. And the argument made by government is that it's going to be part of our immigration strategy, which seems a little bit strange. Wouldn't even the argument make a little bit more sense, possibly a bit more cogent, to say it's maybe a tourism play? But anyway, if you want to take that on, it's a weird one, but let's go. All right, it was on this date in 2022. Alex Noak got his hands on the Stanley Cup when Colorado beat the two-time defending champions, Tampa Bay Lightning, 2-1 in Game 6. So this date, Noak gets himself a cup. Brilliant stuff. All right, so in pretty big news. So DFO announced this morning that since 32 years ago when the cod moratorium was instituted by then, of course, Fisheries Minister John Crosbie, and some of the notable comments and quotes that came from that particular press conference, so they've lifted the moratorium. Now, the total allowable catch is going to be 18,000 tons. It's up from 13,000 last year. There were some pretty strict conditions in play. The thought rolling around was that people were asking for some 25,000 metric tons, still just a moderate increase. Bulk of the quota does go to the inshore, which is very helpful. 7% go to the indigenous community, 3% for Nunatukevat, and the offshore fleet gets 6%, so 18,000 tons. Just for context, back in the heavy fishing years, say for instance in the 80s, mid and late 80s, the total allowable catch on Northern Cod, 250,000 tons. So I guess it's a welcomed announcement coming from the Federal Fisheries Minister, Diane Laboutier, but if you want to chime in on it, we can do it. And for the commercial cod harvesters, when people were bemoaning the timeliness of announcing the recreational food fishery, they said, hey, well, we don't even have our commercial quota announced yet, so just simmer down. Fair enough. So now both have been announced. Interestingly, one of the points that I haven't heard made very often regarding the recreational food fishery is regarding the tour boat operators. So the department says they're going to eliminate catch and release and introduce tagging in 2025. So anything in that realm is of interest to you, let's talk about it this morning. So I'm not surprised because the recovery numbers looked pretty strong, even though the changing of the modeling about the strength of the spawning biomass, moving the data point from 1983 to 1954, didn't add any fish to the water. But here we go. Commercial fishery and the moratorium has been lifted. Very quick note, because I really don't know what to say about this story, and it's really just so sad. Anyway. 30-year-old paramedic Devin George drowned trying to save a young swimmer over this past weekend. So they were swimming in a Dildo swimming hole. There's going to be visitation tomorrow at Warren's Funeral Home in Dildo. And, of course, that's a tragic loss regardless of who he is and what profession that person holds or their age. But the drowning deaths is something to be wary of as we take to the water for a dip. Okay. And on that front, we know that the road ambulance service has been integrated, still awaiting some finalization of the air ambulance business, but anything in that realm of interest to you, let's talk about it. Okay. So yesterday in court, it was determined that David Quirk is going to face a 5.5-year sentence for his role in the stabbing death of Raina Dove in a emergency shelter, a boarding house here in the city that happened on December the 27th of 2021. You know, the story is not only sad based on the loss of life, but even just the conditions and the fear with which they were living. And that's according to the judge. And so that was took into account. And then you talk about conditions. The fight and the altercation started over the butter knife. The butter knife was used to open doors and to lock doors. So when we talk about the deplorable conditions and the fact that we're the only province in the country that pays for-profit landlords millions of dollars a year to house the most vulnerable is really just something that we have to carefully consider, because obviously the outcomes are not what they need to be. That's the second death in a boarding house in the very recent past. So we're also anticipating, and we were told on the 3rd of June, we would get a standards for emergency shelters from the provincial government. That hasn't happened. Today's the 26th. Obviously, the work has been done, so it'll be interesting to know exactly how the recommendations look, how it's going to be enforced. Is there a model or a pathway away from the current structure of paying for-profit landlords to house people in these emergency shelters and or the conditions that they live in? And or the state of security for the residents, because obviously what we're doing is simply not working and it's costing a ton of money. And not to boil it down to dollars and cents all the time, but that is part of the conversation. So 5.5 years for Quirk in prison, but everything about this story is really emblematic of exactly how bad the conditions are and how dangerous the conditions are in these emergency shelters. And on that front, even if you want to expand that into how some of these people may indeed be potential residents of 106 Airport Road. And then a program that I'm going to bring up again, because I think that every person receiving income social assistance who is mentally and physically able should be, I don't know, automatically, but I'll throw that word out there, automatically enrolled in the Employment Stabilization Program. There was one caller who has taken me to task, and so be it, about the fact that I've deemed this program to be a success. Well, it looks like it's off to a successful start, we'll say. When it was announced as a pilot program in the City of St. John's last January, 170 people were participating. And 11 months later, 40 were off social assistance, back into the workforce. And the program is really costing us peanuts, with potential big positive outcomes. So here's how it looks. And they're expanding this pilot across the province. Be great to get an update from the department about exactly how it's working, how many people are in it, and the success or the graduation rate. Under the expanded pilot, participants who begin a new job or continue working will get a government payment of $250 after 6 months, $500 after a year, and $1,000 after 2 years. What we're still trying to find out is what is working inside the new earnings exemption formula, because the worry is for some people on social assistance is that possibly going to work in an entry-level job might bring less money in than you're currently receiving. So in addition to that, they're upping the job start allowance from $125 to $250. Whether you need to get a pair of hard-toe boots or something like that. So I wonder, can we indeed put people into this program? You know, you can't speak for every single person on social assistance, and I think we exaggerate just how many people in the province are receiving that government support. It's around or less than 5% of the population. But those two programs, that program in particular, and whether or not that is an ongoing feature offering at places like the Comfort Inn, it'd be nice to know. But the better we can do to get people off social assistance back into the workforce or to continue working is in everyone's best interest, including theirs. Okay. And, of course, our purchasing power, regardless of how much money you're making, is dwindling. Yesterday, the unfortunate news from the Bank of Canada, from Stats Canada, inflation has actually ticked up from 2.7% in April to 2.9% in May. I'm pretty sure that means come July 26th or July 24th, the next announcement from the Bank of Canada, highly unlikely now we're going to see another slash in their overnight benchmark interest rate, which of course dropped from 5% to 4.75% after 10 consecutive hikes, but inflation up. And talk about reviews that we have not yet seen the outcome is about long-term care facilities. So the work has been done. So whether we look at the possibility to do away with the concept of separating couples who've been together for decades upon entering care. And yes, the man or the woman or the men or the women may indeed have different levels of care, but that has been heartbreaking. Every time you read it and hear those stories, it's truly awful. So let's see if that's part of the report. Also, and I've brought you these numbers many times in the past because we need to know exactly why these things are happening. The numbers are a little bit stale, but it's the most recent numbers I can find. And it's coming from the Canadian Institute for Health Information inside our long-term care facilities. Here's the numbers. 14.2% of long-term residents in this province spend time daily in physical restraints. The Canadian average is 6.5%. So whether that be staffing ratios, which really feels like it's part of the conversation, then we move on to the use of antipsychotic drugs. Stats from the Institute from 2016-17 show that 38.3% of residents, almost 4 out of 10 in this province, get those drugs, compared with the national average of 21.9%. So obviously, huge disparity. We need to understand why. And that review has yet to been publicly disclosed as well. So let's see. Also, in the world of trying to keep the wolf away from the door, the home heating supplement program, which was announced last year, was pretty successful for people who were eligible. So there was 22,500 applications for that program. So if you were successful last time, you can apply again. They've now reopened the portal, the application process for this home heating supplement. So the subsidy ranges between $200 and $500. If you have an adjusted family income of 2023 of $150,000 or less, and have directly incurred costs for the purchase of furnace oil or stove oil to heat your principal residence, you can be eligible. So it's a pretty easy process to apply. There's a couple of things you need to be aware of if you're going to apply and you're eligible. First, you have to provide a copy of your invoices, which includes the delivery address for the purchase of at least 250 litres of furnace or stove oil. Remember to sign your application. Double check that the social insurance number provided is correct, because that's really tripped up some applicants last year in the process. But if you're eligible, you can get some money from the government to heat your home. Okay. So see what's happening up in Churchill Falls. And hopefully someone in the area, whether it be one of the mayors or someone who's experiencing, whether it be as an evacuee or trying to take someone into your home in Happy Valley Goose Bay. But during the press conference yesterday, we were told that the fire, had been held, hadn't crossed the river. Now it has. How close it is to Churchill Falls, we don't know. I don't know at this very moment in time. But we know that the people that were still there operating the hydroelectric generating station and or doing some of the clearing and or fire services, they've all been evacuated. So the water bomber dropped some water on some of the transmission lines, which knocked out power for Lab City and Wabush. Lab City back on stream. Wabush still without power. Looking at maybe getting power from Muskrat Falls or the gas turbine that's in the area, but still without power. And let's see if we can get an update, because it'd be nice to get the accurate, up-to-date information to you regarding what's happening at Churchill Falls. It could be potentially devastating if it makes its way to the Churchill Falls generating station, but fingers crossed. And I've sent an email to one of my water bomber buddies, and let's see if he can give us an accurate, up-to-date information about exactly what's happening in Churchill Falls. But that's terrible stuff. Okay, sticking with more northerly parts of the province, and I think Dave is going to reach out to Roddickton Biodarm Mayor Delamoss. For the second time in just the recent past, the communities of Roddickton Biodarm, Conch and Glee have lost their landline service, cell service, and internet service. She was able to make a call, that's Delamoss, able to make a call using the Wi-Fi through her satellite internet provider, but they don't even know how it happened or what the timeline is for restoration. But Mayor DeMoss, if you're available this morning, an update from you. And we've heard many people in different parts of the province talk about the woeful access to whether it be high-speed broadband and or just basic cell service. If that's of interest, you know what to do. All right. A couple of quick ones before we get to you. Good morning to the folks in Lewisport. We've had Chris DeFreak, the mayor, on this program in the past on a variety of issues. Now, just like many other communities, they're losing their Scotiabank. So Scotiabank announced last fall that they were doing exactly this. Now, thankfully in Lewisport, they still have a CIBC branch, but for the Scotiabank customers, their accounts have been moved off to Grand Falls, Windsor. Easy enough to say, but especially if you have a significant percentage of the population being seniors and their reliance on the tellers, I guess CBC is probably going to get some additional customers here. Scotiabank has said they're putting an ATM inside the co-op building, but for some, that's just not enough. And we had a caller yesterday or the day before bemoaning the banking hours period. But imagine losing your bank. So I don't know what's going to happen for the customers of either Scotiabank or CIBC, but the concern is not just the ability to go walk in to speak to a teller and do your transactions. You know full well, if someone leaves Lewisport, or for instance in Fogo Island, and the credit union came to town, so now they've had that worry staved off. But if you travel to Grand Falls, Windsor, or for folks on Fogo to travel to Gander, you know absolutely you're going to spend some of your hard-earned money in those communities, maybe with some different options for retail and what have you, or to fill up your tank, whatever the case may be. But for Mayor Crystal Freak or Mayor DeMoss, any of those municipal leaders would like to chime in, we can take it on. All right, very quickly. I believe yesterday or last evening was the town hall for the concerned families in the Kenmount Terrace area. Updated information about what the school is going to look like, some of the concerns at Larkar Academy or at Leary's Brook. If you were in attendance, I haven't heard any feedback yet, but if you were there, please bring us the stories from the floor, because some of the short-term solutions, even if the government is going to say absolutely the new school will be built and open for September of 2026, still some questions there, but it's next September for people at Leary's Brook, at Larkar Academy, and maybe at St. Paul's, and maybe at PwC. So what were some of the short-term issues that were broached there? And in the world of education, there is an elective in high school called Newfoundland Labrador Studies. I don't know how many students choose to take it. You would think, and hopefully many would, be important to understand the history of the province, whether it be from an arts side, social culture side, an economic side, population degree. But now, thankfully, and a good idea here, it's going to be mandatory for graduation. If you start high school in September of 2027, you're going to have to take Newfoundland Labrador Studies. That makes sense to me. What do you think about it? All right, the very last one before we get to you. This story, for some, it kind of feels like it came out of nowhere, but this is one of the last recommendations from the insurance review conducted by the PUB back in 2019. And this was a change to automobile insurance protocols. So what's going to happen now is if you're in an accident, and some of the most common injuries, not like real devastating injuries, but sprains, strains, whiplash, you're automatically going to be approved to go to an occupational therapist or to a physical therapist and or to a chiropractor and get pre-approval for some 10 up to 21 procedures. Again, makes a ton of sense. It's in place in other parts of the country. So what the results have been, say for instance in Alberta, when you're able to get that treatment right away, I guess that's supposing you can have access to one of these healthcare professionals, then what they've seen is that you get back on your feet sooner. So you recover quickly, or quicker than having to wait for insurance approval. So you get your health back, you get back to work, and that all makes sense. It's actually saving the money. So pragmatic move here. I'm not sure why it took so long to actually implement this last recommendation, but that's the case at this moment in time. So good news there. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. We're going to kick it off with Tammy up in Clareville to talk about a NAPE rally. I assume that's about the home care issue, and then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin on the top of the board. Line number 1. Good morning, Tammy. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How about you?
Good. Fine, thank you.
Good.
So I'm calling in this morning to confirm and update you on our rally for tomorrow here in Clareville.
Yep.
So our rally will be held tomorrow afternoon between 4 and 6. Our union number is 9211 Home Care, and it will be between the Scotia Bank on Shoal Harbour Drive and Winganet. There's a gravelled area that has been cleared, and that's where we'll be holding our rally. And we will also be having signs that if anybody wants to come and pick up one and put that on their lawn, they are more than welcome to come over and get one.
And of course, we're talking about the home care issue, just so people know what we're talking about.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So, Tammy, before we get into some rally details or protest details, do you happen to know how many of the group of 22 agencies have moved on with the contract that was offered yet rejected?
Nothing has been, all has been rejected by the 22 because this is why we have to go back into negotiations because majority of us said no to it, but 54%. So therefore, the 22 will have to go back to the table and renegotiate.
That's right. I mean, it's such a confusing process, and I imagine it gives it a more complex face than it would otherwise. Because 22 different negotiators and no government representative, which I still cannot get an answer as to why they're not at the table, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose.
Yeah. No. Well, like I said, we're wondering at that ourselves. So we're hoping that probably if we can get everybody, our brothers and sisters in the province who's hopefully listening to this, can rally together and ask for an affiliate or even Tom Osborne to go to the table and get to the bottom of this and help rectify what's going on here.
Absolutely right. So I'll give you another chance to give us the details, the where, the whens, and who's welcomed or who's invited.
Okay, so our rally is tomorrow afternoon, Thursday, June the 27th, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. between Scotiabank and Shoal Harbour Drive and Winganut. It's the gravel park of the area. And like I said, we do have signs there that are able to be given out to anybody who is with us and want to show their support.
I think it's great. Tammy, keep me in the loop. Oh, last question. Do you happen to know the status of one of the negotiators who was suspended indefinitely for her role in the negotiating process?
What was that again? Sorry.
The one lady who we were told she was received a letter and said because of her role in collective bargaining, she was being suspended indefinitely, which is outrageous.
And that will be until further notice, until they come together and do a meeting regarding that. So we have not heard nothing about that since. So, and we don't even know who's going to be negotiating on our behalf for our area here in Clarenville.
When you know more, let me know.
I will most definitely, Patty, and thank you very much. You have a great day. And everybody in Clarenville and surrounding areas, please come out and show your support to us, the home care workers here in our area.
Appreciate the time. Good luck.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I mean, we've got to get it right in home care. It's truly amazing that there's such a standoff here. And again, whether or not we have even the right processes or structure in place is, I think, a debate that's yet to be fully had. But anyway, let's talk about that home care issue. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Dan. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. And how are you?
Couldn't be better. How about you?
Not too bad. Another great foggy day.
'Tis that.
Yeah. I'll tell you now what I call in on is the $171,000 being sent over to Britain for soccer.
It's a really bizarre story.
Yeah, I think it's misuse of funds, personally, because right now here in Newfoundland we have tent cities coming up and people crying out not getting enough to live. Senior citizens are being left out in the cold. It's just beyond me how they can take $171,000 and give it to. And now, if it was a Newfoundland group, that would be a different story because charity begins at home, as far as I'm concerned. And if for $171,000 to give to one group of people out of the coffers of Newfoundland, which the government now is fighting Ottawa on equalisation, going crack to saying we need money, we need this, we need that, and then they can turn around and give out $171,000. It's beyond me.
Now, it wasn't in the budget, so it kind of came out of nowhere. I'd like to know how this unfolded. So did we go approach Barrow AFC with this opportunity to put the government logo on the front of the jersey? I have no idea. In the big scheme of $10+ billion in the budget, this is not huge money, but it's all about the decision-making process for me. So what we don't know is inside that 4th division in professional soccer, what's like, for instance, the average attendance of one of those games? How many games do they play? In what types of cities? Are we going to see some news coverage of this in the UK? Because it's a sort of an interesting story on their end. For us, is more concerned about the money and the process. But there's a bit of unknowns here that is, they talk about it being part of the immigration strategy. Even if they had to bill it as part of the tourism strategy, that kind of makes a bit more sense to me. But we still don't know how many people might even be exposed to this story across the pond.
Well, I'll tell you now, what I'd like to know is who was the person who brought this to the table, to cabinet, to approve, which MHA brought that in, and that person there, right then and there, should be asked to resign or whatever, because it is a grossly like you said, it's not much money, But when it comes down to the ordinary person, $171,000 is a lot of money.
Oh, I'm not sneezing at it or looking down my nose at it, because you're right. For an individual, that is a boatload of money. And the only person I've heard speaking on behalf of the government is Minister Jerry Byrne, because that's how they're talking about it as an immigration strategy, as opposed to potentially some eyeballs that might intend to visit the province as a result, as opposed to consider immigrating to the province because their favorite soccer team is sponsored by the government. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around the story.
You know, that's the funny part about it, is that, you know, we might get some people immigrating over. Well, you know, we got all these people that are immigrating over now, and you know, we got them from all countries, especially war-torn countries and everything else. And I pity those people and everything else, you know, for the fact that, you know, they had to uproot from their beloved countries and come over here and try to fit in. And, you know, for them to turn around and say, okay, we'll give a soccer team $171,000, and maybe we might pick up some immigration people or something like that. That blows my mind, especially when Britain is not at war, or, you know, they seem to be running like Canada, a pretty good country.
Now, Britain itself, England is not in great shape. It really, truly isn't. They're feeling the fallout of Brexit. They've got an upcoming snap election that's been called. It looks like the party that's been in power, the Conservatives, for, I don't know, a couple of decades anyway, and some pretty strange people have been the Prime Minister of England over the recent past, and it looks like Labour's going to sweep in without even policy announcements. I mean, it's just a strange state of affairs. The economy is struggling, the health services are struggling mightily. So maybe, just maybe, if, say for instance, if we got lucky and a doctor and a nurse and an engineer and an entrepreneur, if that's some of the people that decide, hey, that looks like a great place, maybe I'll consider moving across the pond to Newfoundland and Labrador, then maybe, just maybe, some return on investment could come. But that's a big if. Those two letters make up for a pretty big word. I'll give you the last thoughts. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, well, like I say, somebody should be held accountable. And if the government doesn't hold people accountable, that, you know, within the next year or so we're going to be in an upcoming provincial election, let alone a federal election. That should be one of the questions when they come knocking on your door. You just say, well, who's the one who brought the looking for money for a soccer team over in Britain when we have people here starving?
Fair enough, Dan. I appreciate making time for the show. Thank you.
Yeah. Listen, you're doing a good job.
Thanks, buddy.
Keep up the good work.
Stay in touch.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Very quickly before we get to the break, and a couple of the callers that's dropped out, there were some interesting subject lines there. I'd like to get them back. But before we get to the break, we want to say the happiest of birthdays, the 90th birthday, to Jerry Goodman. From his family and friends, he listens to the show apparently every day. He has sent me some emails in the past, so very happy birthday to you, Jerry. It goes on to say, Jerry is an amazing dad, granddad and great-granddad, a wonderful friend to so many people. He served 35 years in the military, then went on to teach in the reserves. We want to thank him for his service, and especially want to thank him for being such an inspiration to all of us. Happy birthday, Jerry. Have a great day, buddy. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going up to Walbush to say good morning to the Mayor, Ron Barron. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Now, granted, there are much bigger issues to discuss in the province, but if you're so inclined to talk about the soccer sponsorship, I'm into it. No issue too big or too small for me. Now, just a couple of very quick notes. I am aware of some of the things that people keep sending me via email, and keep it coming. So, for instance, there's a big shipyard in Barrow, and it actually built HMCS Newfoundland. So that was a hospital ship that served in the Second World War. Also, there's the largest offshore wind farm, or one of the largest offshore wind farms in the world, is located just off the coast of Barrow. I'm not 100% sure what the connection is people are trying to make there, because if the soccer team's not involved, what are we trying to hope that the owners of the wind farm see the logo and that's some sort of incentive to come to this province? We know that amendments are being made to the Atlantic Accord to allow for offshore wind. So if I'm kind of missing the point that some people are trying to make, clue me in. All right, let's keep going. Let's go up to Labrador and Wabush in particular. Say good morning to the Mayor, Ron Barron. Mayor Barron, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you. So obviously, plenty to discuss. How's the power situation in Wabush at this moment?
Well, we still have no power in Wabush. My understanding in Labrador City, they have rolling power outages, I guess. Some parts of town are still without power.
And so, what's the timeline? Have you been discussing the issue with Newfoundland Labrador Hydro? Because they're talking about maybe access to Muskrat Falls Power or one of the gas turbines that's close by. What do you think the options are? Or what's being considered?
Well, we had that discussion yesterday with the Premier and the head of Nalcor and some of the officials with them. They were saying best possible case scenario, they were hoping that they could have something back to us by lunchtime or after dinner today. If that couldn't work, then they were looking at a diesel generation possibility, but they had to source that now, so I gave them some ideas where they could probably get some of that from the local companies where they're down. I don't know if they got any portable diesel generators that they could hook into the system. Power right now is being fed through Quebec into Labrador City through Fremont, Quebec. But that connection does not allow for any power to come to Wabush. And Labrador City, from what they were saying yesterday, was only going to be at 60%. So if we were drawing that too, it would be even less over here, I guess. So there's a lot of questions got to be answered after this is all said and done to see what played out here and why, So.
Are there any fires close by?
Yes, we have one just south of us here in Wabush. I guess it's about 35 kilometers now south of us. Yesterday, you could see it, and it's a big, massive fire that's there. And you could see plumes of smoke that were coming out, and you can see that it was going very good yesterday. So it's no threat right now to us. The concern now, I guess, for us is to make sure that we get our power established as quick as we can back here.
How far away is the fire at this moment? And is it moving towards your community?
No, the one that's south of us is about 35 kilometers, I guess, or so. And it was blowing away from us. But, the way winds are, sometimes they can change pretty quick, and that could start coming this way. So it is a concern. I don't know why we don't pay more attention to these fires when they first start. I heard a minister and then talking the other day that we're adequately served with the bombers and stuff that we have, but apparently not. I mean, you see what's unfolding in Labrador right now. We're short one water bomber. Even if we had all five, still wouldn't be enough. So we need to get talking on how we're going to best serve this province and the needs for this type of situation in the future again.
Yeah, absolutely, because there was 2 came from Ontario, 2 came from Quebec. The Quebec bombers have been recalled. 2 apparently arrived yesterday from Saskatchewan. So it's nice to have that cooperation and support from other provinces, but attention to our own fleet and preparedness is obviously where we have to start this conversation. With the fire some 35 kilometres south of Wabush, has it compromised air quality?
Just yesterday we had it in the morning, and yesterday evening we got a bit of smoke coming into town. So right now, no. But like I said, if the winds change, that could change drastically, because there was a lot of smoke in that fire. Luckily it was blowing away from us. So,
anything you want to share with the residents of your town?
Just to be patient. We're trying to keep all our infrastructure needs running. Look at our water and our wastewater systems are working. We did have to put a boil order in effect because our plant, when that went down, our diesel generator doesn't allow it allows just to pump water. It's a diesel pump, but it does not allow chlorination of water, so we had to have a boil order in effect. So that's playing out here now. That's just adding to what's happening. So just ask residents to, be patient. I know we were reinforced numerous times on calls yesterday that they're doing everything they can to possibly restore power to Labrador West as soon as they can. And, if anybody needs help, reach out to us. I know yesterday, Patty, we had a terrible day with cell service here. Most of the calls that I was on yesterday even were getting dropped or couldn't hear. So that's something that's got to be addressed again. Coverage been terrible here, for the last number of years. So they dropped the ball here too. They got to come in and do more. So just to the residents of Wabush, there will be a potable water station set up in Labrador City. We'll have more information on that by noon, so people will be able to go get drinking water and stuff over there. So if you have any questions for us, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and if we can help in any way we can, we will. So just be patient, folks. It's a power outage right now. Hopefully, the latest update we got was last night. We still haven't heard nothing else yet today, so hopefully we'll hear something soon. But it is what it is. We're trying to work through this, and again, I just can't stress, be patient, folks.
Appreciate the time. And if you have an update anytime during the show here this morning you want to get back to us, please do.
We definitely will do that, sir.
Appreciate the time. Thanks for the call, Mayor Barron.
Okay, thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
A little update from Labrador. We'll keep it coming as frequently as we can. Did you say line 3, Dave? Okay. Is that a thumbs up? Okay, let's do that. Line 3, Mike, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Paddy. How you doing, buddy?
Doing okay. How about you?
Oh, I'm not bad, Blackburn, old fella.
Good man.
I'm driving taxi here in the city, Paddy, and this pedestrian mile downtown, we're supposed to have access from 9 or up until noon, I'm assuming is the rules, right? But security doesn't seem to let us pass through. If we were delivering packages or beer or liquor, no problem. But if we're delivering people, we're not allowed on the street. Now, it's the end of the month. You get a lot of senior citizens to go down to do their banking, pay their bills and whatnot, get their pension checks. And, I just had to let a lady out on Harbour Drive so she could walk up to the Royal Bank on Water Street with her walker because they wouldn't let me through.
So just let me get this straight. If you're bringing a package to a business, you're allowed to drive your cab down Water Street through the pedestrian wall?
That's correct. But if I have a person, no, I'm not allowed.
It seems like we've got that backwards.
I called the city of St. John's on this last week, and they said, no, sorry, that's obviously a mistake. You can go on through, and now here we are again today, and they're not letting us through. But if I was delivering beer or liquor from one of the bars down here, no problem. Yeah, you go on ahead.
Yeah, it kind of seems backwards. So for the city of St. John's, obviously there's been a private security firm hired for security purposes surrounding the pedestrian wall. A quick call or a quick email to the manager or owner of that firm to communicate with his or her staff. We could settle this in 10 minutes.
I spoke to the supervisor of the commissionaires at City Hall, and he said he would straighten it out, and obviously he has, and it's been like a week now.
Yeah, sometimes some of these issues that seem really simple, or there's a quick fix available, and yet it drags on and on. I can never wrap my mind around this. So, okay, if you're listening at the city this morning and you've told Mike and other cab drivers that, yes, if you have a human passenger, you can indeed drop them off to where they're going versus simply allow packages to be delivered, please communicate with the security company and make sure that everyone who's working at those barricades knows exactly what the rules are so we can figure this out. Let's see if we can get it done before lunch. How about that?
Sure. Excellent. Thank you, Patty. Appreciate it.
No problem, Mike. All the best.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Yeah. Sometimes the left and the right hand not know what each other is doing or saying is frustrating, but this was a simple fix. So once again for the city, if you think the rules are that the cabbies can't proceed, please just make sure that the people working at the barricades know exactly that. Let's get another one before the break. Let's go to line number 4. John, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
I hope you had a night. I hope you're doing well. Yeah. The reason I'm calling you, it seems rather maybe with everything going to hell in the basket. But I'm having problems with my phones, and we may experience that. But I'm calling you about the hockey season actually, and it seems to me, and a couple of friends I've spoken to, that it's been going on too long, and then that's just because of Edmonton and all that kind of stuff. We'd love to see Canadian teams do well, but I mean, my God, it's awfully long, and I don't know anyone who hasn't got tired of it at some point in time throughout the season. I kind of blame it on Gary Bettman to putting too many teams in there to begin with. Do you have an opinion?
On whether or not there's too many teams? I don't think there's too many teams necessarily. And, when you spread teams around, now there's arguments to be made whether or not we should be in these so-called non-hockey markets, and that's a fair conversation. But the more eyeballs, then, of course, he doesn't work for the players, and he doesn't work for the fans. That's what gets lost in the Gary Bettman conversation. He has one employer, that's the owners. What they want, he does. So people kind of confuse that. Bettman is not there for the fans, which is counterintuitive, but that's the fact of the matter. I don't think there's too many teams.
Sorry to interrupt you, Patty, but like I originally said, we've been having phone problems here where I live for a week or more, and nobody seems to fix it. And I didn't catch the gist of just about everything you said there. Anyway, I just think, the season seems to start in September, and it goes till June, and it's just maybe it's because, like I said, I still think there's just too many teams in there that some we don't even, I've been to visited places in the States, they didn't even know they had a hockey team. But I just thought, we're in light of what's happened in the past couple of days, that maybe it's just the playoffs, or maybe it's the whole thing combined, that just goes on awfully long.
Yeah, there's about 2 weeks of preseason. This past year, I think started like the 15th or 16th of September. And then there's 82 games, and then there's, minimum 16 games in the playoffs. So from the middle of September to the 24th of June is a very long season, I would suggest. And it's not going to change, because it's all about money. Because Bettman works for the guys who the sole concern is money. Well, I guess plenty of owners want to win, but it will indeed be about the money. There's 32 teams in the league. Arizona should lose their team. They don't have a rink. No one goes to the games. Of course, we're getting a new expansion team in Salt Lake City. Expansion teams have done very well since they changed the rules. Look no further than Vegas winning a couple of cups right out of the gate. So, yeah, the season is extremely long. The weather warms up, people find other things to do. Maybe they turn their attention when their team is out to a bit of soccer or whatever the case may be, or baseball or something else. Yeah,
I'm sorry, Patty. I again, because of technical problems with our phones, I didn't catch just about everything that you happened to say.
There's nothing I can do about that, but unfortunately I missed some brilliant insight.
Yeah, well, I didn't catch any of that.
Okay, well, leave it at that for today, John. I appreciate the call. I guess we just have to pop, because if we can't hear, I can hear John loud and clear. But anyway, unfortunately on his end, he couldn't hear. Now, of course, announced yesterday is the 2024 Hall of Fame class. It's gone from the really exclusive club to the Hall of Very Good versus the Hall of Great, possibly. But Pavel Datsyuk, he was one of the most dazzling players of a generation. He's in there. And, of course, repeat Selke Trophy winner, Shea Weber's in there. Natalie Darwitz, Chrissy Wendell-Prohl, Jeremy Roenick got the nod. He's over 1,200 points in the National Hockey League, including over 500 goals. A couple of execs in the Biller category: David Poyle, of course, former general manager, and the current NHL Senior Executive Vice President of Hockey Operations, Colin Campbell, also elected. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the president at the FFAW. That's Greg Priddy. Greg, you're on the air.
Morning, Paddy. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
Well, it's a rough one. It's a rough start to today. The Northern Cod decision has come down from DFO, from the federal government, and it's extremely disappointing, despite all the hoopla from the Liberal MPs.
Yeah, they're pretty pleased with themselves and this particular announcement. So where's your frustration? Because, people were talking about the potential for 25,000 metric tons. It adds up at 18 or lands at 18. The one concern I've heard from a few harvesters already this morning is 6% going to the offshore fleet. Is it true that when a commercial fishery is open like Northern Cod, then based on NAFO rules, at least 5% goes offshore?
That's correct. That's correct. But, those MPs, let's go back to those MPs for a second. They're not only pleased with themselves, they're absolutely charmed with themselves. We knew back in January, when that ridiculous redfish decision came down, that they had lost. They had lost it. They've crossed the line here, and what they did was they supported the transfer of that redfish resource to the offshore companies. So that's what we saw there. And then we started going to Ottawa. We started meeting with those individuals, talking about the importance of maintaining that promise of 115 before the offshore companies got in. And we look forward as an industry, as a group of processors and harvesters, to quotas of upwards of 25,000 tons. We could absorb that from the inshore. And we put that point in the processors put that point to the feds. And lo and behold, what we have today is an absolute insult, contemptuous decision against inshore harvesters. What they've done here, in essence, Paddy, is a rollover from last year and some bonuses, a bonus there to the offshore. They've let the inshore in here under 20,000 tons. Can you imagine? The same crowd that are responsible for the closure are now back in. And somebody might say, well, it's only 1,000 tons. What are you getting your pea hot for? Well, the point is they're going to be at the table from year after year after year going forward, and they're going to build on that. But, when you have MPs like O'Regan, and Goody Hutchings that week in Ottawa, then, there's no balance anymore. We saw the fastball coming on the redfish issue. We warned them not to do it, and they've done it. And it's absolutely ridiculous. We've got a rollover with the insurer. Now a part of the team at the table. And by the way, what does this do for rural Newfoundland? All the hoopla last year about the rising, the cod coming out of critical zone increases the wealth for Newfoundland, and even some of these foolish MPs even said this is going to be great for Newfoundland. Well, where's the wealth if you basically have a rollover? How are we going to generate wealth from harvesters and plants? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. What they've done here is continue the trend of transferring resources from harvesters to offshore companies, and it's just not good enough. Now they've carried it into the northern cod. Absolutely ridiculous, poisonous decision against this province. And I'm telling you, these guys. I mean, if this what these MPs is their parting gift to the offshore. Well, I'm telling you, there are people going to stand up against this decision, and we need people in there who will support this province. Man, imagine having a resource at your own doorstep that these MPs are keeping us from. Can you imagine that? And then have the balls to come out and say, this is good for the province. Well, it's good for their offshore buddies, and that's about it.
So with redfish, the offshore quota was bizarre anyway, because the offshore wasn't even built and prepared to take on that redfish quota, which makes absolutely zero sense. But just for clarification, unless the quota was as much as 25,000 tonnes, this was always going to be the math, wasn't it? Because it was going to be X percentage, in this case 7% to the indigenous communities, 3% for Nunatukevat. Yeah, but if the NAFO rules are 5%, so unless this was increased to 25,000 tonnes, the breakdown and the division of the TAC was going to be exactly what it is, based on the rules. Is that not fair, or am I missing an important point here?
No offshore here. The promise was no offshore until we hit 115,000 tons. That's the message we kept piling on Ottawa, the federal minister, the local MPs, all on deaf ears. They're in at the table. So that's the problem. And we can live whatever NAFO decisions were made, and we have to live with that. But it was promised to ourselves and the indigenous, and now they've completely packed this up once again and transferred to the offshore companies.
How many inshore license holders are there going at the cod? And does this mean there's going to be potentially more players coming in? Because an additional 5,000 tonnes doesn't really add up for people to be new into the field.
Good point, and that's a great point. There's about 3,500 owner-operators out there. So the potential here is we could have close to 10,000 people going after cod in one form or another, one zone or another. But that was the point. We were supposed to build this industry slowly. If it was 25, we'd have an opportunity to explore new markets, get more people geared up and share the wealth from that resource. But this is technically a rollover with addition on the offshore, and it's not. We saw it coming, because when they made the decision on redfish, we knew they were going to throw cod under the bus too.
Let's talk about another rollover. So in Capeland last year, the total allowable catch was 14,533 tonnes or somewhere thereabouts, and a complete rollover there. But now, once again, the whole fracture in the industry. So apparently some 5 processing companies have signed a deal with the union, but it was not itemised whether or not how much per pound they were going to pay, because the price setting panel, they selected 25 cents, 15 cents less or thereabouts than what you suggested. So how much are they paying, those 5 processors?
Well, they've agreed to pay upwards to 30 cents for the not upwards, but 30 cents for the high grade Capeland. The ASP rate was 25 cents, and of course we went in at 40. So once harvesters made the decision not to fish, companies reached out. We reached out to other companies, and we struck a deal independent of that FOS decision. So that's, once again, that's a pretty remarkable feat here, and a demonstration of the absolute failure of lowball loader and that price setting panel. I mean, it's now, put the boots to harvesters three separate times, on crab twice, on shrimp, and now on capelin. So 4 times in the last 15 months. I mean, it has to change, or it has to go. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's important, and Patty, you just remember this one, whether it's cod or the redfish, it's important that our propellers are turning on those industries, on those species. And, we can't have MPs that are lobbying to keep us away from our own resources, or panels that decide who accept these lowball prices and then, in essence, stop a fishery. Did it last week, did it last year for almost 9 weeks. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So, moving forward, things have to change here.
I don't know how it's been heard, or the reaction inside the world of ASP, because some of their processing buddies who are not one of the 5 might be a little bit frustrated, but I'll leave that up to Jeff Loader or anyone else to chime in on that. But what's your message to some of the harvesters you represent? Some of them are going to be getting 30 cents, but others getting 25 cents because they don't land with those processors. So what about that crowd?
Well, we're suggesting... Well, first of all, we have a couple of major companies that have not signed on, but are prepared to pay the 30 cents if, in fact, the capelin is good enough. So that's significant. But, what we're suggesting is, of course, that if Loader's down there just representing Royal Greenland, which we appears to be, I mean, the rest of them are gone elsewhere, then we're suggesting not to sell for 25 cents. And we have indications from these other companies that they're prepared to go the extra mile here and purchase what they can from our members, because it is a very unique situation this year.
A couple of very quick ones before I have to go. You mentioned shrimp. Sure, yeah. What's the status of the license holders on the southwest coast who are looking for the buyout?
Dead in the water, actually. Yeah, dead in the water. Once again, we had buy-in. To get this one, now we had buy-in from the provinces, Quebec, New Brunswick, Newfoundland. Right, province was there, said, and by the way, province still supporting those harvesters in 4R. And who pulled the plug on it? With the federal government. Minister came out and said absolutely no. So once again, these weak MPs we have in Ottawa, running around dumping millions, watch them every week dumping millions of dollars across Atlantic Canada. But for the prime industries here, they just close the door and do absolutely nothing. And there'll come a time, there'll come a price, there's a price to pay for that, and it'll be in the election box. And we're looking forward to the end of these weak MPs.
Yeah, and the shrimp catch rates in that particular part of the province are way down. They were hoping for redfish to backfill some of the losses they've experienced at shrimp, but of course that didn't happen. Last one, because I got to get to the news. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, what a great problem to have, right? The shrimp is being eaten by redfish. There are global climate changes here at play here. And what a great problem to have, because it was actually something that you could fall back on. But not with these MPs, not with this minister. She decided to ignore the communities, ignore the harvesters, and transfer it off to the offshore companies. I mean, it's insanity what's going on up there, and it needs to change. Thanks. I appreciate the time today. Thanks.
Just a very quick one. Are you waiting into the election at all? Are you going to endorse anyone for any position, or are you staying out of it?
I'm staying out of it, Paddy, because in as much as we still have a union to put together here, and we're taking a lot of crap from some of your callers, actually, with some of this outrageous stuff about placing windmills in lobster areas and photocopying ballots. Yeah, I'm staying completely out of it. There's an election committee in there, and chips will fall where they may, and good luck to everybody.
And that's why we went to Katie about the wind turbines. That's why we went to Mark Dolliment about the election, because people can think one thing. I'm just trying to get the facts on the table.
Oh, yeah, and you did a very good job on it, no question about that. But, you got these, I guess, people who consider themselves way behind, and they're pushing somebody else's agenda to smear this outfit. They've been at it for 8 years. It's still going on. It's going on during the election. So be careful when people come up with these outrageous horseshit issues against the FFAW.
Appreciate the time, Greg. Thank you.
Thanks, Paddy. Much appreciated.
Take care. Bye-bye. As FFAW President Greg Priddy. All right, when we come back from the news, Michael Boyle is in the queue to talk a little footy, that's soccer, and maybe this was a reference to one of our other callers that's in the queue. Ryan Cleary's also there, and George wants to talk about the backup power situation coming from Quebec to help power up, whether it be Lab City and or for Wabush potentially. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Michael. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. I'd love to talk about soccer, the beautiful game.
Let's do it.
Yeah, but I think we've got, I'm not sure, is it Soccergate or Barrowgate or Jerry Byrne exit gate? Absolutely outrageous, the kind of things that are happening in terms of, in terms of most governments have the idea of due diligence, transparency, you know what I mean, and making a case type of thing for something. Now, I know other governments, the PC government, have made all kinds of outrageous decisions as well, but this one is absolutely from left field. I think what they're doing, Paddy, there was a team in the 4th Division called Wrexham, and there were 2 Hollywood stars who invested a ton of money in it, and they made a great success story. The Newfoundland government is trying to jump on and do the same kind of thing, kind of idiotic. So you wonder where this came from. I'm just wondering, what do you think? Where did it come from, this idea, out of left field?
I have no earthly idea. I mean, if we approached Barrow AFC, the question begs is why? And, what do we think we're going to get out of this? How many eyeballs are going to see it? Because apparently they draw maybe 4,000 fans on the average in their 4th Division games. They'll get carried on Sky Sports maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times per season. So it just kind of came out of left field. I have no earthly idea as to why anyone thinks that this is a good idea. And if so, maybe explain to us exactly how.
I've talked to some people in Ireland and the UK, and they think it's an absolute joke of the highest order. And heads should roll for this type of thing, idiotic decision. And it's not as if they were the Premier League. You're talking 4th Division and Barrow, and then trying to come up with connections and so forth. And there's nothing wrong in giving money to sports, but give it to local sports and local development.
Yeah, and even the association with Wrexham is playing in the 2nd Division now. They got to bump up. Yeah, and you talk about the Hollywood star. So Brian Reynolds is the primary owner of that team. I think Tom Brady owns a stake in it as well. So, yeah.
They're millionaires, and it's absolutely. And I think there's the other thing. There's questionable, the linkages to the wind energy, and that if you don't do the due diligence in a situation like that, it makes you wonder about other events. And also with the Soccer Association, here's the other one that really comes out from left field. Imagine a team from Halifax playing a team from England in Newfoundland, and in Newfoundland we're paying the money for those teams to come here. That doesn't seem to make sense to me.
So there's Wanderers game coming. Is that the case?
Yeah, from Halifax are coming here, and there's a team from England, and the Newfoundland government's paying $30,000, towards that. I'm just beginning to wonder, would it have been much better to have a local team play the English team?
Absolutely. And I mean, just think about it. I went to a Need store the other day. I bought a ticket to support a traveling baseball team. I walked into Sobeys, bought a hot dog the other day to support a traveling soccer team. So you're right. We've got teams out there scrambling and fundraising, and that's a real tedious position when you're a parent of a young athlete as well. So there's always questions about how money is spent and why it's spent. Just the whole decision-making process here. If we knew more about it, then we'd probably be able to have a more well-rounded conversation. But right now, it's just sort of, what? We're doing what? And again, I know it's not the biggest issue in the province. I understand that, but it's just sort of a confusing story.
Yeah, and the other thing, you think of rugby and other associations, who play, international teams and type of thing like that. But you have an international, and St. John's City Council sponsoring that as well. Where's the due diligence there? To support their own local teams. And Soccergate, Barrowgate. I'm afraid it's not going to go away for Jerry Byrne.
Fair enough. And you mentioned rugby. The rugby community here is super tight. And if you get to play on some of the travel teams, it's pretty great experiences for those young players. I mean, we took Jack to Wales a couple of times, Ireland a few times, to England. I mean, we played down in the States, we've been across the country, and amazing cost, but they really do support the travel teams of some of the big fundraisers by the big guys to support the young travelers. So that sport, for me, I know people might be wary of contact or what have you, but it's a beautiful game, and it got rich traditions, certainly when we talk about our United Kingdom roots. And so rugby, you get some of the best coaches and the best travel opportunities of any sport in this province at this moment?
I mean, so, you wouldn't mind in terms of sponsorship. Barrow, you're not dealing with you're dealing with a fourth division, bottom feeder team. Good luck to them getting the jerseys and stuff like that. Type of thing like that. But it does seem like a horrendous decision, and the same way the PCs have made theirs too.
Yeah, like. Another quick question on this one is, will people who see the jerseys even know what they're looking at? Because it's one thing if your jersey says Emirates, you know what that is, right? And if your jersey says one of the big name brand companies, but will they even know what they're looking at on the front of our jerseys? And you mentioned the wind farm. One of the largest offshore wind farms in the world is right off the coast of Barrow. So what do you think the relationship is there? Because I'm having a hard time connecting those dots.
Yeah, I wonder, was there some people had a few drinks somewhere, or a late night call, Zoom call somewhere. There's I think Jerry Byrne might be time for him to come and do his 15-minute diatribe on an open line show. Get a hold of Jerry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.
Back to the beautiful game.
All the best.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
And speaking of the beautiful game, beautiful result last night. I was really quite chuffed with that. If we're talking a little soccer, we'll use some of their verbiage. All right, let's take a break right on time. When we come back, we're talking Northern Cod, power from Quebec, and whatever else you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Ryan Cleary. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty, to you and your listeners. Thanks for taking the call, sir.
No problem.
Patty, I'm calling in this morning about DFO's decision to reopen the northern cod fishery after 32 years of moratoria. To cut to the chase, I see this as a dark day for the Newfoundland and Labrador fishery. Not an historic day, but the darkest of days. We've learned nothing after 32 years of moratorium. We've suffered sacrifice, incredible sacrifice, the loss of tens of thousands of our people, a brutal blow to our economy and our self-esteem as a people. And DFO and the Government of Canada have failed our fishery again. Now, here's why I say this. You got a total allowable catch that's been set at 18,000 tons for 2024, as Greg Priddy and as you mentioned at the beginning of the show. The offshore gets 6% of that quota. So, first off, now, DFO introduced a management measure in writing, Patty, in 2021 to allocate the first 115,000 tons of northern cod to the inshore sector and Indigenous groups. So right off the bat, DFO has absolutely broken, undeniable, that written commitment. From my perspective, the right way forward was an increase in the harvest level under a continued stewardship fishery. I have no problem with the 18,000 tons. But, Patty, the stewardship fishery was restricted to hand lines, long lines, and gill nets, not offshore dragger technology. Resuming the full-fledged commercial fishery, and Patty, people need to understand this. Your listeners need to understand this. Resuming the full-fledged commercial fishery gives access to foreign and domestic draggers when that stock is still in the cautious zone, meaning fishing is to be kept to a minimum. You mentioned this earlier too, Patty, but under NAFTA rules, with the resumption of a full-fledged commercial fishery, foreign fleets get 5% of the northern cod quota with the resumption of the commercial fishery. Now, Patty, that's reason alone not to lift the moratorium. Foreign fleets will get 5%. It's already a free-for-all outside 200 miles. That northern cod stock is migratory. It goes inside and outside, from inshore to offshore. This will make it a legal free-for-all. In terms of science, you got a stock status in northern cod that and you know this, Patty. You've spoken about it many times. That stock status was elevated to cautious from the critical zone, not because the number of northern cod changed or increased, but because a new model was introduced that took in more fishery data going back to the mid-50s. Harvesters will tell you that they've seen significant growth in the northern cod stock. But Patty, DFO scientists said this past March that stock growth has been stalled since 2016. Last year, DFO completed a northern cod survey for the first time since 2020, but the survey was criticized for being carried out earlier than usual off southern Labrador and the northeast coast. George Rose, your listeners know George Rose, the renowned northern cod scientist. He also stated in a paper just published recently that northern cod have resumed their traditional offshore migratory routes. The way forward, Patty, the point I'm getting at is with extreme caution. That's not what's happening here. This is not caution. This is foolhardy. This is not historic. This is shameful. You're still there?
Just listening.
Okay. A couple other points I want to make. And this is about the offshore and the access to fish that they'll get. Now, DFO is yet to say whether the offshore trawlers, which are already getting 6.odd%, will be permitted to catch the indigenous share of the northern cod quota. If the offshore can catch the indigenous quota, which is combined is 10%, plus their own quota of 6%, that's 16% of the overall quota to offshore factory freezer trawlers. So northern cod is barely on its knees, and we're going to unleash the offshore draggers. The other two cod stocks adjacent to Newfoundland, in 4R, in the Gulf, off the south coast, in 3PS, sure, they're all underneath. You had a resumption of the 3PS commercial fishery. It closed in 93. It reopened. The quota went up to 30,000 tons. It was pounded to the ground again. I also have to question the strength of the FFAW. I heard pretty on just before I got on about the I have to question the FFAW about the strength of their lobby effort, given that the union also represent workers on the offshore trawlers. Pretty talks about weekend peace, but how about a weak union? You've got a union that represents the inshore and the workers on the offshore trawlers. How can you effectively lobby for the inshore when you also have in the back of your head the interests of the offshore? This is a dark day for the Newfoundland and Labrador fishery, Patty. We've learned nothing in 32 years. Lifting the moratorium at this point to allow for foreign and domestic bottom trawling is foolhardy at best. It's criminally negligent at worst. I'm surprised DFO wasn't sued long ago. I think that if Gus Etchegaray was alive today, God rest his soul, he'd be, well, you would hear him on your radio show, Patty. DFO's reputation is shaky, to put it lightly, to begin with. Now it's shot altogether.
And
now
of course,
it's mud.
Mr. Etchegaray would have been involved in offshore factory freezer trawlers as well. So I just make that important point.
He wouldn't have been, but he wouldn't have supported this decision, Patty, because he understood the damage that the offshore draggers could do when a stock like this that is still shaky. When you unleash that dragger technology, and again, the offshore catching their own share plus possibly the indigenous share,
right?
This is a disaster waiting to happen, Patty.
Are you suggesting that simply with the label of moratorium being lifted that kicked in the NAFO rules, as opposed to simply just increase the quota for the inshore harvester, just do that and that alone would have been the best case scenario? Is that what?
Patty.
Okay.
You're absolutely, you got it absolutely right. Maintain an unofficial commercial fishery, a stewardship fishery, increase the quota to 18,000 tons, just like we have, but by lifting the moratorium, making this official, now you have the offshore draggers unleashed inside 200 miles and outside 200 miles. For a stock that's in the cautious zone, that is shaky at best to do this, Patty, an historic day. What a slap in the face to Newfoundland and Labrador this is.
I appreciate the time this morning, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, certainly, I guess that is important. The technical label of moratorium being part of this conversation, which does indeed trigger some of the rules and regulations that are currently in place regarding NAFO. So when that word moratorium is called lifted, then the trigger of 5% is automatic. So could this have been handled differently? Possibly so, or very likely so. Pardon me. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 4. George, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Yes, sir, I can. Okay, I'm calling from Lab West here today. We're experiencing power outages, right, because of forest fire, which is, no one can really do much about that. But we're currently running on Fairmont's backup generator. Now, Fairmont is a community of 2,200 people on the Quebec border. So, it's excellent that we got a little bit of power from them, but now Lab City is close to 13,000 people with Wabush, and the amount of profit comes out of here is ridiculous between IOC and Decorah. But where's our backup generator? And how come it always seems when Lab West is in distress, Quebec comes to our aid? But where's NL? Where's our government? And it's almost every time that something goes on here, right? Like Quebec is the first and right here, ready to help, and we barely get anything from the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, right?
Sure. So are you saying that there should be more permanent domestic potential for generation here? You know, we do know that the current established power, the proximity of Lab City to Fairmont just makes sense. So are you suggesting that there should be like a big diesel generator like the one that they replaced in Charlottetown after it burnt down? I was kind of surprised they went back to that technology, period. But so what are you suggesting could or should be done? Specifically?
Yeah, for backup purposes, because like right now, like there's no water treatment stations here. Like I'm sure the hospital has a backup generator. I mean, I'm sure they and like the RCMP station, but like so now like IOC employees are asked to come to work as normal. You can't shower, you can't cook. You know, like how are you supposed to maintain a normal life, right? Like it's. I know, like there are other issues going on, but in all reality, I mean, there's 12,000 people here now with that can't live a normal life. They can't cook a meal. They can't, you know, and I mean, it just would make sense to me to have a backup generator. If we can't run our water treatment system, you know, we kind of, you've only got days. We're on a water tower now, and I mean, with 12,000 people on one water tower, it doesn't go very well, you know?
Not to be saucy, but just for clarification, if I'm a resident of Lab City or Wabush or wherever and the power goes out, do we care what the backup generation source looks like and who owns it and who operates it, as opposed to just give me some power?
I don't think that's a real big issue. I mean, in all reality, most of the provinces ran off of diesel generation and such anyway, you know, and we are on Churchill power. That's why we're hydroelectric power. That's why we're down now, because the main lines are down. But I think at the end of the day, like, you need to be able to live. Like, you got to be able to cook, you got to be able to clean, and even to be able to, for the water treatment systems to be up and running and operational, and you know, to be able to cook a meal at least once a day. I mean, it's fine now. Lab City has power, you know, but Wabush got to go without. They're not hooked into the same grid. So now you've got the whole community of Wabush. They're going to be days. Everything in their fridges, their freezers, everything's going to be gone bad. You know, like it's. I feel like this is the province's issue to me, like, and the province has really dropped the ball. Like, where's our infrastructure to keep our community safe? You know, and the amount of tax dollars that come out of Lab West is substantial. Like, it's unreal, the work that comes out of this place, right? But we're forgotten. We're like NL's forgotten little brother. You know, they pushed aside and forgotten about, right?
Well, it shouldn't be the case. And what the permanent infrastructure would look like, I suppose, if we're talking about the similar backup generating units that they have, for instance, at the mines and or at the hospital, at the scale that would accommodate the 12,000 people in the region. So fair enough. And hopefully we'll get an update soon that power will be restored for the folks of Wabush, because they're entirely without.
Yes, entirely. And I mean, like I said, I mean, like Fairmont is a community of 2,200 people. Now, like they've got their backup. That's what we're running on, is their backup generator. So, I mean, how can we be here with a community almost 5 times as big, or well, not quite that, but we've got nothing. You know, we're depending on them now. You know what I mean? Like It seems to me like we've got an infrastructure problem here, not more than anything else, right?
Well, obviously, if you don't have the capacity, but I think the same can be said for most regions of the province when you think about it out loud. Like, if anything goes wrong, large scale, like, there's no backup around here either. Because if, you know, Holyrood, it doesn't even run at full capacity these days, but if we experience big problems, say, for instance, with the Labrador Island Link and through the Long Range Mountains, or something goes haywire with Bay d'Espoir, there's going to be a shortage of backup infrastructure just about everywhere, maybe significantly so in Labrador. No argument there.
Well, on the island now, like, you've got more options. So you've got a lot more generation plants, and you've got a lot more, you know, power coming in different. We've got one power line comes through here, you know, and that's it. That goes down, and now we're without. You know, there is no redundancies here. There's no redundant systems to make sure that people can survive. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
Yesterday it was like we were in the Stone Age. There was no cell service. There was no power, no water, no nothing. There was no radio. You know, it was like we fell off the face of the earth. You know.
Points taken and understood, George. Anything else you want to say this morning?
No, I appreciate you taking my call, and I hope you have a great day.
Same to you. Thanks for the call. Take care.
Thank you.
There you go. I mean, it's a fair question about the backup capacity that is non-existent in that particular area. And again, just, remember, we're talking about all these transitions away from certain types of fuels and sources of generation. And when the diesel generating station in Charlottetown burnt down, we replaced it with a diesel generating station. Bizarre. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, one of the gentlemen who was calling for the lift of the moratorium or for an expansion in the amount of total allowable catch for Northern Canada was Alberto Wareham. And of course, he was talking about 25,000 tonnes. That's not what we're discussing this morning, when the reality is 18,000 tonnes. Alberto Wareham's in the queue. Then we're going to talk to Marilyn. She's talking about why the different courts don't talk with each other. Darrell Hines, I assume, was at the Kenmount Terrace Town Hall last night. He's going to give us an update on what they heard. He's the chair of the Learysbrook School Council. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the President and CEO at Icewater Seafoods. That's Alberto Wareham. Alberto, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you today?
Great today. How about you?
Good. Well, I mean, it's a great news story, I guess, for Arnold Cove, the people of Newfoundland, and at the same time, I know the people in Churchill Falls, the surrounding area, are having a tough time, and hopefully that gets under control as soon as it can be.
So we've heard from Greg Priddy, Ryan Cleary, and others via email saying this is a dark day and this is a terrible news story, and you think it's a good day. How do you view it differently than the two prior callers?
Well, I mean, we have, for the first time in 32 years, we have the reopening of the commercial fishery, and I guess the government saw the need to have a balanced fishery. All sectors participate. That's what, I've said this in the past. I mean, that's what all successful cod nations that are, that we compete with, they have a balanced fishery, right? All sectors participate. They have more of a year-round fishery than we do. We need to spread the cod out here. We need to supply more to our markets year-round of our locally caught fish. So, I mean, I think it is a start of a great step forward for Northern Cod. I mean, yes, as you said in your interlude, I mean, we were asking for a higher amount, but we understand the minister wanted to be conservative, and the world is watching. We want to do it right. So we're hoping that the stock survey is done at the time next year, more in historic line, and we'll have a better understanding of the stock, and hopefully there's further increases coming next year.
What do you make of the concept of, as opposed to officially and technically lifting the moratorium, simply just add to the inshore quota so that we wouldn't have this 5% automatically going offshore?
Well, Paddy, I mean, we have, the stock is in the cautious zone, right? And I mean, there's no fishery that we're aware of in the cautious zone at a quantity of over 13,000 tons that Canada could go to a NAFO table and could say that it has to stay a stewardship fishery. I mean, it is in the cautious zone. You can have a fishery in the cautious zone. We're working towards the healthy zone. You're working towards Range Stewardship Council certification. So, it was the natural step, and the fisheries in the cautious zone need to be managed differently, which is why we're doing what we're doing today, I guess.
So just describe why you think the so-called balanced fishery is the right idea, because a lot of people in the province, even though there's plenty of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians working on the offshore factory freezer trawlers or working on the draggers, describe what you mean by balanced fishery, why you think that's the right process or the right structure.
Well, okay, so as I said, I mean, every successful cod fishing nation, which is primarily Iceland and Norway, that we would compete with today, they have a balanced fishery. They catch their fish through the year with all gear types. I mean, in Iceland right now, they're using primarily trawl and hook and line, which is, similar to what would be used in Newfoundland. And the inshore, it's gillnet, primarily gillnet here with a little bit of hook and line. From a fishing perspective, it's very similar. But it's market access as well, and needing cod spread out through the year. I mean, cod migrate to the inshore. They're in the inshore in 10 to 12 weeks. And I mean, we just don't have the production capacity in Newfoundland in the short term. We're not going to have it in the next 3 to 5 years to catch and produce and sell all this fish in 10 to 12 weeks. And no other country in the world is doing it. So I mean, it's just what other successful countries do is what we need to do.
I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but, I've heard people, we make references, oil business, Norway, the fishery or tourism, Iceland. Do you know how they process fish in Iceland? Because it seems to me they do more with the product. We do a lot of head off and gutted around here versus fish meal, fish oil, some of the canned products they produce. Apparently they use everything from the tip of the head right through the tail itself. So are they doing more with the product than we are?
They're not doing more than Ice Water is doing. Ice Water, we're competing with them. If you walk into our factory in Arnoldcove, you will see the exact same technology, the exact same processing method for cod there. As you know, we've said in the past, we sell 99.8% of the cod weight we buy. So they're not doing any more. The only difference is, because of the larger boats they have, they do retain, all of the cod. So they get the liver to make oil, but we don't do that. In Newfoundland right now, we have all of our cod landed head-on gutted. But from a head-on gutted cod coming into Arnoldcove, to a head-on gutted cod coming into, our largest competitor in Iceland, it'll be produced exactly the same way with exactly the same technology. We're adding value. And, Patty, that allows us to pay more to the inshore harvesters in Newfoundland because we are maximizing value, competing with the top cod plants in the world, right? And, as I said, our utilization is well over, 96, 97% of the cod that we buy.
What does this specific increase mean for your plant?
Well, it means obviously, Arnoldcove will produce, more, hopefully, of the inter-cod that's landed. We'll have access to our share of the offshore cod, which will land in the fall, and we'll produce that in Arnoldcove. So it's more employment producing local fish for local employees at Ice Water and Arnoldcove, and more supply into our customers that are demanding and looking forward to the growth. This is the only positive news story on North Atlantic cod in the world right now. We have, last Friday, I don't know if all your listeners are probably not aware, but, the scientists just recommended a 31% cut in Iceland and in Norway and Russia to the Barents Sea cod quota. Iceland just announced a 1% increase. So, the increase of 5,000 tons in Newfoundland this year is the single largest increase in North Atlantic cod of any cod stock in the world. And and I know we're only at 18,000 tons to start, but Northern cod is the third largest cod stock in the world, and it's the second largest ground fish stock in Atlantic Canada.
It's not an insignificant announcement, but it's amazing. And like everything else, what you think depends where you sit, depends on where you stand. So on this one, dark day in some corners, being applauded in other corners. Some of the inshore harvesters that have emailed me this morning, pretty displeased, knowing that TFO had said it from the onset that the inshore would get all of the additional quota up to 115,000 tonnes, but of course here we are at 18 and it's 84% inshore, and who knows if the offshore is going to fish the indigenous and the Nunatuket quota as well. Anything else you'd like to offer this morning, Alberto?
Well, I guess the other comment, Patty, I'd add is, the offshore's historic share, of catches below 115,000 tons has been up to 48%. So at 6%, you could say we're down very significantly from where we were. We're very appreciative to be back in and have a balanced fishery, as I said earlier. And, as I said, with the NAFO rules, with foreigners having 5% and Canadian offshore vessels not having any, there's just no way that's palatable, right?
Appreciate the time as usual, Alberto. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. It's Alberto Warren, President and CEO at Ice Water Seafoods. Before we get to the break, let's go to line number 3. Marilyn, you're on the air.
Oh, good morning, Patty. I'm a first-time caller, so a bit nervous. But
take your time.
I'm calling. We're also listening on Monday. They were talking about women. Two women were talking about abuse and laws having to change. And I have been my observations as a supporter to someone going through this is I see the biggest flaw in it is that, they go to domestic abuse and they go and get an EPO at the provincial court. Then the problem here is that when they go to family court, whether they've had an EPO or a peace bond, that is not communicated. What happens in provincial court is not communicated to the family court. So the family court is not aware of any of these EPOs, not aware of any of the peace bonds that have been issued. Like, the family court doesn't provide enough time when they go in the courtroom. I mean, as I said, I'm just sitting. I'm not allowed in or out, but I sit as a supporter. And you know, it's 10 minutes in, and this is not even allowed to be brought up in the family court unless it goes to trial. And the lawyers don't want it to go to trial. The judges don't want it to go to trial. The people involved probably don't want it to go to trial. So they're not even allowed to bring it up.
So just so I understand, Marilyn, not allowed to bring what up in particular? So you're talking about something that be bail conditions from a criminal court that can't be discussed in the family court? I just want to have a better understanding of specifically what we're talking about.
Okay, so what happens is, you know, a person goes and applies for an emergency protection order because of abuse of their partner.
Okay.
And then, so they go into the family court. They go into the provincial court for an emergency protection order. Okay?
Yep.
So the emergency protection order is only for a maximum of 90 days. Then the respondent, who is the abuser, has 10 days to respond after being served. Okay? Now I have this is facts because I have notes. And anyway, then the court date and time is given for the judge to determine if it is dropped or if it stays in place. Now, the applicant, who happens to be the abused person, must face the abuser in the court and be asked questions by the judge in front of the abuser. The applicant isn't allowed to have a support person in the court with them, and that's the person being abused. The person, the abuser, is allowed to have someone in the court with them because they're responding to the application. I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, then, so an EPO, when you go in for an EPO, you can ask for specific criteria, like the property is not to be damaged by the respondent, the bills are to be paid on time, they're not allowed to be anywhere near the applicant, and you can also request that the children be kept in your care during the duration of the EPO. Okay? So then, now, you talk about abuse. I mean, the system is set up to just wear down the victims. Then, for a peace bond to follow, you must go and apply once the emergency protection order is completed. There must be a direct threat to you and your property in order to be able to apply for and for it to be granted. Now, both parties appear in court again, and a judge hears the case and determines if a peace bond will be placed. Now, the big problem with this, Patty, is that it's very hard to get a peace bond for emotional abuse, as this type of abuse is dog whistled to the victim. Do you understand dog whistled?
Yes, I do.
Like,
unfortunately, I do.
Yeah, no, that, like nobody sees it, nobody hears it, but he's just got to raise a hand or rub his hair or look the wrong way at her, and it's or him, whatever. I'm trying to keep it neutral, and it's very, very hard for this. Okay, so they're calling for change, and a change. At this time, just small changes would be so helpful to alleviate so much change in a victim's life. So I have said, okay, it is time for change. How many times do we have to see the purple flag go up at Confederation Building before everybody realizes that it takes a village to stop this abuse that's going on? And I'm only talking of one part of abuse. I know there's all kinds of it, but I'm looking at a time for a change for an EPO when you're talking about family and children. And, I think my thing is an EPO should be an automatic peace bond and last for a minimum of 12 months. or until a court order has been finalized in a family court. But other conditions need to be added to the order, such as you should automatically be able to apply for child support on the EPO. And then the child support should be a condition of the EPO or the peace bond and will be paid through support enforcement each month. This will save months of financial hardship that victims experience because of the other side refusing to pay child support, and it's a form of financial abuse. Then, number 2 is all communication between the victim and the abuser should be done through court-appointed apps in order to maintain safety of the victim. So, they can sign in and they have a word, and then they see, okay, if you want to see the kids, okay, then we arrange that, and stuff like that. It doesn't mean he doesn't see the kids in 12 months, but it means that they go through these apps to, through the court, so the courts can see how interested they are. Because, they aren't. They just want to keep up the abuse. Anyway, number 3, any child, neglect or abuse, whether emotional, physical, or financial, should be seen as a breach of the order and dealt with accordingly. Now, these are just small changes, but it happens right at the EPO being moved to EPO peace bond, minimum of 12 months. And child support done right there and then, because you know how many victims go back because they can't get child support and they can't get, it all has to go through support enforcement. But it doesn't mean that they can find these people. Mm-hmm. And if an EPO and a peace bond, when they're gone for it, and there's not everybody out there that has the strength to go in and apply for an EPO, and then go back again for a peace bond.
I understand. You call them small points. I call them quite meaningful. And those changes could absolutely protect women or men, whoever are the victims in this case. As a first-time caller, that was pretty concise and points very well made, and I appreciate it. I have to get to the break, but I'll give you the final thoughts.
Well, partner abusers come from all social economic statuses. And that's from the lowest class to the highest class. And I feel that's why it's not being dealt with in a proper way. It's lip service, Patty, and if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And that's what's happening. They are giving lip service, and a victim's first scream is for help. But, buddy, a victim's second scream is for justice. And it's time that the family court realizes that both parents is not always the best thing for children. And we've seen that with people killing their children because they had some control of them and everything else. So, it's child support should be there and enforced right away as an EPO and a peace bond. With people, they would have more courage to go in and get that peace bond. And I'm telling you, the person that I've observed for the last 5 years is absolutely amazing, and I would support her for the next 5 years. But the thing is that it's time for a change, and I said, we're going to put these, and I know that people listen to Openline, and it's time for someone to say, yes, we can change it. And it's a big change. Yes, I agree with you. It's a very big change, but it needs to be implemented so that people aren't afraid and not, they're not being punished. Because once you're a victim, you remain a victim unless justice takes place.
Marilyn, thank you very much for this.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. That's pretty powerful stuff right there. Let's take a break. Appreciate the patience of those in the queue. We'll get to you right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Alex Taylor. You're on the air.
How you doing, Patty?
Doing okay. How about you?
Pretty good, bye. So I just wanted to let you know on a little fundraiser I have coming up. It's my 5th annual. It's going to be for the St. Vincent de Paul Food Bank.
Okay.
It's on July 3rd down at the Calvary Baptist Church, in the community hall downstairs, which is 775 Topsail Road in Mount Pearl. It'll be featuring a bunch of local musicians. It's at 7 p.m. And yeah, it's the admission's a non-perishable food item or a monetary donation. So, love to see everyone down there.
Alex, you've done a lot of this over the course of the year, so I guess, part of it is to be altruistic and to want to give back. Maybe also part of it is to polish your craft as a performer. So how has the experience been, and what's the impact been on you? Because we know what the impact is at St. Vincent de Paul.
It's a really big impact on me. I mean, I know that there's a lot of things that go around the world, and I like to spread some kindness and spread a little bit more sunshine, one might say, and it really does affect me and makes me feel a lot better.
Good man. Tell us about some of the fundraising over the past, I think you said this is the 5th annual, so how much money have you been able to raise over the years?
I don't know exactly money, but we've been able to fill the truck up as many times as we can. We've had it, so it's been a really great time.
Good for you. Who's performing with you? Anybody?
I'll have a few fellers. I can name a few of them. I have an Aaron Sharp coming down from Labrador. He's one of my buddies. And also a Chris Connolly. That's just 2. We have a bunch more. I'll be playing too for a little bit. And yeah.
Good man. So if you have the wherewithal to offer a food product and or monetary donation, and the food banks will tell you that it's great when people make a donation of food, but the cash is king. They get to stretch a dollar further than we can. So maybe money is the very best option, but whatever you can spare would be most welcome. Give the folks the details of where the wins one more time, Alex.
All right. It's on July 3rd, so just next week, actually, 7 p.m., down at the Calvary Baptist Church, Community Hall downstairs, 775 Topsail Road, Mount Pearl.
Good on you. Keep up the good work. Break a leg.
All right. Thank you, Patty.
Thanks,
have a good one.
You too, pal. All the best. Bye-bye. All right, that's good stuff. I mean, he's a good young man giving back repeatedly. I really love those stories. All right, let's get to the news on time. Appreciate the patience. Darrell Hines there to talk about the Kenmount Terrace Town Hall last night. Of course, he's the chair of the Learysbrook School Council. And Gregory wants to talk about the tent encampments. I think he's currently living in one. So we know that the big ones behind the Colonial Building and across the road from the Confederation Building are gone. But that doesn't mean that people all of a sudden found themselves housing or went back to the emergency shelters. There's little tent encampments popping up on a variety of places here. So I know there's some that are out of sight around the Grace Hospital site or the nurses' residence site and other places. So have we made any real pragmatic advances and improvements? Maybe not. Let's take to those 2 callers right after this and whatever you want to talk about after those guys. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the chair of Learysbrook School Council. That's Darrell Hines. Darrell, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy, and thanks for the opportunity. I did want to call in an update on our meeting last night. We had a great crowd. I mean, they had to keep setting up chairs at the community centre, and God, it must have been over 100 people. So first of all, I guess, Paddy, I'd like to thank government for setting up the meeting and allowing, the Minister Studley as a local MHA and Minister Howell and John Abbott as Minister of Transportation to come in and do a very high level presentation and then take some calls. We had some great representation from the Larkhall School Council, Learysbrook and PwC, and there was lots of great questions there from parents on what was a fairly dreary, windy, wet all night.
It was that. Okay, so let's get to some of the high-level questions that came from the floor. Most importantly, some of the answers. So when we talk about short-term solutions, whether it be for your school or Larkhall or St. Paul's or PwC, it's one thing to talk about the construction of a new school and timelines and all those things, but what about some short-term solutions for Learysbrook?
Boy, Paddy, this was, I guess, most disappointing. There wasn't many answers, and, there was a lack of definitive answers on, what mitigation and the various things we've asked for to be done before this September. Because, again, and I'll speak to Learysbrook because I'm chair and I know the numbers. I mean, under the government's reconfiguration plan, we had 510 approximately when we closed for this summer, and we're going to have 550 in September. And, again, when we, there was many answers or many questions posed to Minister Howell, and some of it was a little bit more, but there's larger issues of dealing with the city on traffic issues and crosswalks and outdoor green space and other things, and a lot of it, Paddy, unfortunately ended up being, quote, we're going to take that back and look at it, or we're going to take that back and try to look at it over the summer, and we're going to bring that back to our people. Very vague, obtuse answers, which are I guess I would have expected more definitive plans, because again, I mean, our school has been growing 2 to 4 kids a week all year up until we closed, and the all-time record, Paddy, for Learysbrook is 547, and based on projections, we're going to have 550 kids in that school in September. And again, a new school, even though John Abbott says it's going to be built in 18 months. I mean, most people there last night didn't accept that. We need some serious mitigation and efforts and work and focus in the next couple of months, because we're going to have a rough 2 or 3 years in those buildings, as the view of the parents there last night.
Yeah, and of course we've got people moving into the catchment areas, and we've got people who've come from other countries or entering the K-12 system. So, even with some of the reconfiguration of the grades, it's not necessarily going to deal with the size of the student population and the actual capacity of the school to handle that many students. The concept of, that's a good question. I'll bring it back to our people. The problem with that answer is that these are not new. These are issues that are known, both by Minister Studley and by Minister Howell and by Minister Abbott. So, of course, it feels good to say, well, we're working towards some solutions, but some of the work probably should have been done and some announcements actually forthcoming at a town hall, because it's not just about sounding boards and the floor asking questions. It's to hopefully bring some solutions to the table, because they know these issues. I mean, there's been meetings between Minister Studley, Minister Howell, and members of the school community. So the fact that there are no solutions, here we are at the end of June, September is legitimately right around the corner, so it's hard to picture something changing meaningfully by next September.
No, and this, I mean, again, do we need to have a public meeting to embarrass government to go in and do some painting and some deep cleaning and some basic maintenance in some of the buildings? I mean, both of those, I mean, the Larkhall is 60 years old, and I mean, there's parts of that are there's no windows. You got kids in basement, Paddy, with no natural light. I mean, it's not a conducive learning environment. It's not positive, and again, based on all the numbers, we're going to be at record or above record capacity, and the public records go back 25 years in those buildings in September. And again, our Learysbrook student population, and again, because Kenmount Terrace is expanding, and it's not a retirement village. There's people coming here with young families and new Canadians and all that, and we welcome that. I mean, we're a very multicultural community, and those schools are very multicultural. But I mean, for government to say they weren't aware and this is somehow new, and the MHA is, somehow blindsided. I mean, our school, we kept splitting classrooms all year, and that gave you another teaching unit. So you would think someone in the Department of Education since September last year would have said, boys, there's something going on over in the middle of St. John's when we got to keep splitting classes. We got to keep adding teaching units because of exponential growth. I mean, for government to say now, boy, geez, we never saw this coming. I mean, it's laughable. I mean, I told you a couple weeks ago when I talked to you, I mean, I wondered if all this was done on the back of a napkin, because, again, parents last night exceptionally frustrated, and people are almost tearing up because they've been living in that community for 10 years. They were promised when they moved there by new schools coming, and many people, like my kids are going to be long out of Larkhall. I mean, this is my last year now. My daughter's one of the grade 9s moving to PwC, but like people are second and third generation kids coming through, and they're not going to get the benefit of a new school. And here we are now in the short term, tremendous overcrowding, which is going to be above, from my research, record numbers. And all the minister talked about last night was, a very vague term, Paddy. She kept talking about there's a relief valve in place. Well, what's the relief valve? I mean, are we going to put 600 kids in Learysbrook before we do something? I mean, there was, eventually, I don't know last night she mentioned at one point portable classrooms. No matter where you'd ever put them on them school footprints, because unless you're going to put them in people's backyards, there's little public space there and little green space, but fundamental questions like that, boy, and I didn't hear any definitive answers and a plan for short term and long term. And that's what I mean. Again, you had 100 parents there, very, very concerned, and because of the learning environment, overcrowded, poor air quality. It's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable, and it's getting really, really, really frustrating.
Darrell, understood, and I appreciate the update this morning. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Darrell Lyons, Chair of the Lyrisbrook School Council. Let's keep going here. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the Mayor of Roddington by Arm. That's Della DeMoss. Mayor DeMoss, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
I'm okay, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Very beautiful day here on the Northern Peninsula.
A little bit grey in town, but that's steady as she goes. So let's talk about some of the issues you're experiencing with the loss of landline, cell, and internet. Is it still in place?
We actually got connected back again last night around 8:30, but we were 27 hours without any type of landline service, and cell phone service was gone. Unless a person had satellite internet, you couldn't even get any like Wi-Fi calling. You had to actually have a satellite internet service.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, this is not the first time it's happened. It happened to a very similar outage last winter. Do we happen to know what happened this time?
Actually, what we received, it was a third-party contractor in the area actually pulled one of the lines down, but we did not know this until many hours after the fact. We weren't able to get much information at all, which was what was really frustrating for all of our residents and for the communities here, because with the lack of information, we just could not make contact with an individual. Myself personally, I had to actually get onto a chat with the support. I could not actually physically speak to a person. I kept asking and just couldn't seem to get anywhere for hours.
And just because the landlines go down, it shouldn't be the case that automatically the cell phone usage goes down. So, of course, this obviously was a third-party mistake or error, and that can happen. But some of the worst-case scenarios, the inability for many to be able to call for an ambulance or to call for the fire department, did anything like that happen?
This is exactly what happened. Was when this went down, we lost the ability to be able to contact for an ambulance, to be able to contact the police. Individuals actually had to physically walk or drive into these locations in order to avail of the services. Our clinic was down to just urgent emergency cares. I did see the ambulance go a couple of times yesterday. I know that they have a satellite phone. We're still in the process of getting the new radio system that the government is rolling out so that they can make those communications. But if you don't have that landline to make that 911 call, you're just stuck. I mean, we just don't have that ability in our homes if we lose our landline. We lost our landline. We lost our cell phones. We could not make that 911 call.
And this is across the board here. It's not just in your community, but also extended into Conch and to Englee. And so we've got to understand, these types of supports, these types of services need to be very robust and much more reliable than they currently are in different pockets of the province. I know you snuck out to make this call, and we appreciate you making time. But just, is there any quick update regarding the leadership in these aforementioned 3 communities about working towards economic development?
Actually, we have been approved for a program, and we are actively seeking an individual to fill that role. We have some office staff already hired, and we have a location already identified, and now we're just trying to find a EDO in order to start all these programs that we've got all these brainstorms about to get going. So we're really excited on that aspect of it.
Can you share any of the brainstorms so far?
I'm sorry?
Can you share any of the brainstorming that's taken place so far, like for what specific industry or a specific company or a specific angle that you're choosing to take?
Okay, well, right now we're looking at the tourism angle for this side over here. We're wanting to really expand on that one there. I know a couple of other ideas that was approached was the trail system that's here that the government is also touting. We're looking at trying to connect our 4 communities that's over here, Mainbrook, Conch, Roddington by Darm, and Englee, so that we have that exact same mirrored image that's over here, so that an individual can get into Mainbrook and they can go all the way to Englee, they can go all the way to St. Anthony. So we want to tie into that one as well. Really, we're open, looking at exploring many angles on industry with us, because we really don't have a lot of big industry here. Every one of our communities, we have the smaller, like the smaller grocery stores. We have Rifts. We have Clover Farm that's here. So we're looking at trying to just expand, and what can we do for our local businesses? How can we assist you as well? So we're open for ideas. We're just really getting started. This is our first time getting this type of program on the go here, and we're just really excited on branching out and letting this just grow.
Well, hopefully that's the exact outcome that takes place. Keep me in the loop on that economic front, and anything else you want to discuss regarding the cooperation between Conch and Englee in your community, or anything else under the sun. I appreciate your time this morning.
All right, Patty. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Mayor Della Damas of Rollington Biodarm. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, Gregory's next. He's currently living in one of the tent encampments that have popped up around the city. It's one thing for a colonial building and Confederation building to be clear of tents. That doesn't mean people went away. They didn't find a place to live. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Good morning, Gregory. You're on the air.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you.
My name is Gregory McCain. I go by Corey, too. I wanted to talk about the tent encampments.
Okay.
People living on the street and that. I'm not sure. I got a few questions. What should we do? Like, we're not allowed to camp anywhere. There was a lot more people there than the 11 that the volunteers and that knew about, because there's some people that hide in the woods and they don't take the help of volunteers. So we got 15 people that was at the camp. What happened was they tried to, they subverted us, right? They tried to defragmented us. Everybody's broken up everywhere. We got 3 people that went to shelter, 2 at one, and 1 guy at another shelter. There's 1 guy who went downtown. There's a couple that, with such being pressured out so quickly, we haven't heard from them. They didn't even know and notice anything like that. So we had to go back in the rain again and leave a little note in a baggie for them, and hopefully they found it, but they haven't called any numbers. 2 of them went to Pepe Park, I think, or 3 or 4, I'm not sure, because it's hard to keep in contact with everyone. There's 1 guy, another couple. 1 is in the hospital. The other, well, his missus is with him at the hospital, and I think they went to a shelter too. There's two of us went to Farm's house. I'm at a friend's here now. Out of the 3 people that went to the shelter, 1 of them got beaten up last night, and the other guy had robbed. There was a couple of calls made. There was 1 guy who's not allowed into most of them. So if out of the 3 people that I know that got into the shelters, 1 got beaten up, 1 got robbed. That's a 66% chance. They don't want to go to the shelters. And now we don't know where to go. And they demoralized us, but they broke us up.
You're not wrong, because we knew full well that when the tents were popping up around Confederation Building and they were so-called disbanded, and then they made their way down the Colonial Building, and then the proximity to the park and all the other issues, then that got disbanded. People were going to go somewhere. It's not like all of a sudden everyone found a spot. It's not like all of a sudden everybody thought that the shelters that I want to avoid at all costs, well, I'm going to go there now because they moved my tent from the Colonial Building. It was just a lot of it was just for show. I'll agree with you in full. So, and I'm not going to ask you where your tent is, because you're right. People aren't allowed to be camping out in public areas like this. But the question is, if not there, where? I'm going to ask you a personal question. Feel free. Go ahead.
I'm going to join. I don't need a tent. I got about, we I don't know, nothing the 4th or 5th year here in Newfoundland, homeless. I'm from here. I got a few years up way in Ontario. A lot of shelter systems I've been in, and I've been out west on the streets too. But here, I'm going to probably end up downtown with my other buddy down there, and we'll just sleep either some of the banks, Atlantic Place, the Mile 1 Steps, the stage. They even got that shut down. They're just trying to work with the moral fragments. There's somebody who's trying to vindicate themselves over this situation by hiding it.
Gregory, have you tried to find a place at the Comfort Inn?
I have. I've filled out the application. I worked with Homestead for about 2 years, and I'm working with End Holders in St. John's now. I filled out my application a week or 2 ago, but I got a dog, so they won't let me in. As of right now, right? But they do have plans, and like you were saying earlier this morning, they got different plans for different phases. And I think they realize now that it is a human right, and they're just a bit in over their head. They're trying to, they don't know what to do really, but they're trying. Yes, I'm trying.
Gregory, I'm going to ask you a personal question. Feel free not to answer it. What are the circumstances that led up to you being homeless? What happened?
When I was away in Ontario working, I got robbed pretty hard and lost everything. So I had to go to a shelter. And they're just as bad up there. Well, you can't find protection. I was at the Better Liver Center once, and there was like a couple of hundred people there.
So you got robbed.
George, yeah, that's just how I ended up. I went to homeless shelters in Ontario because the rent and they want 2 months up front up there. It's not like damage deposit. You got to pay your first and your last right away in Ontario. And that was like so 2,200 or 25. I don't know. That was like 8 years ago or 10 or 13. I don't know. But I've been out with my dog, so I ain't giving her up.
Okay, and that's up to you. And this is not a question to be mean. Are you able to work?
Not really. I got a substance use disorder, but that I'm being treated for. I got a prescription from a doctor that helps me with that disease. And besides that, from living on the street so long, especially here in Newfoundland, my neck is bad with arthritis. I can do things. I go around in the camps, I does whatever I can. But my hands and neck, it's arthritis from living on concrete. Anyway, here's the thing what I wanted to talk about with the detention campaign. We didn't have any notice, and I know a lot of people, and I got 3 different pictures of notices that have been served. Every one of them takes 24 hours. Out there, we had one guy's medication got soaking wet. A few of my friends are still soaking wet. And besides the discrimination, being homeless or living outside, there was threats of taking us to jail, and we moved again, and we were pushed away again. So that's my question. Where do we go? What do we do?
Where do you eat? Where do you get something to eat, Craig?
I know it's everywhere to get something to eat. People on the streets. If somebody runs in the museum, the gathering place is always there.
Yep.
7 days. The gathering place always is 7 days a week. Monday from 8 to 10, you can go to the George Church United in the Pratt Center. Fridays, it's like 10 to 12. And Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, it's 11:30 to 12:30 at the Test Penny Center. Thursdays, there's food at Drive down there. The church, I'm not sure when they are because I was up there with a friend and it was closed Friday past, but she swore it was open then. And then we're at the 100 at Cornerstone on Saturday. You ask for leftovers at the Wiseman Center and get food on the streets or help from our volunteers who comes by and sees us all the time.
Have you spent time in an emergency shelter?
There's another one. I can go with our garbages, but sometimes we'll go and get a food bank. I'll use the shopping cart, bring it to wherever we're at, or we can get a run, or whatever we can do. A food bank, if we're living outside, especially in the summer and the winter, and if you get any meat or milk or anything like that, it's going to rot. So we got a couple of 115 people, we're going to eat it all up in a day.
Before I have to go, have you spent much time in the emergency shelters here in this province? You told us about your Ontario experience.
Yeah, I've been pretty much in every one of them. Only place I haven't been is the Wiseman Center. And that's probably much it. Actually, I don't think I was in the bad one where the lady when her dog got killed. I wasn't in that one. Across from the bear.
Well, the issue hasn't gone away. That's one thing for sure. Gregory, I wish you well. Take good care of yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah, boy. All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're going to talk about wait times to get into an addiction recovery bed, Northern Cod. And, of course, we were told on the 3rd of June we would be getting the shelter standards report, I suppose you'd call it, from the provincial government. It's the 26th. We haven't seen it. We'll talk about that or whatever's on your mind right after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Wanda, you're on the air. Line number 1, Wanda, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. Yep. I'm here, Patty. Sorry about that.
No problem. Go right ahead.
So I'm calling from Placentia. I'm actually a registered nurse of 35 years. I have a son who unfortunately fell into addiction at age 15. He's now almost 32. and still, in active addiction, has had ebbs, flows throughout the years. I won't get into the whole history because I'll be here all day, and you might have to navigate me a bit because I'm nervous. I've never called Openline before, but this is very serious.
Just take your time. Go ahead.
I'll start by saying he lived in New Glasgow up until about 2 weeks ago. He did go to treatment last year there, a rehab that I paid to send him because we couldn't get him into a timely fashion here. We detoxed him at home. Myself and my partner detoxed him at home, got him into private rehab there that I paid out of pocket for, took out of my retirement savings and sent him after working my whole life because I couldn't get him into anywhere in a timely fashion in Newfoundland. So we did that. It worked for a short period of time. It was only a 4-week program. Fast forward, things, unraveled there. He was in New Glasgow floating around after he got, back into trouble again with drugs and safe housing. So he ended up back in Newfoundland a couple of weeks ago. Now looking for help again. So Thursday morning, he called the recovery center to go in for detox. So his primary drug is cocaine, and I guess anything else he can get his hands on. So he called recovery center on Thursday, but they didn't have a bed, so they told him to call back the next day. He called back the next day, which was Friday, and the nurse practitioner that he spoke to that day did an assessment on him for admission, which he told him he would get a bed, or he couldn't guarantee a bed, but it looked like he would get a bed by Sunday. A family member agreed to let him stay with her for a couple of nights just so that he'd have a safe place to lay his head that he wouldn't use. And that worked out. I mean, yes, he had some withdrawal and stuff, but he was in a safe place. So they told him to call back again on Saturday at 12, which he proceeded to do. He got a different staff member this time. And, of course, she said to him, okay, you had your assessment done yesterday, so you last used when? He said Thursday. And she said, well, you're not going to get a bed tomorrow. It looks like you're not going to get a bed tomorrow. Now you don't require our services anymore. And I know because I was on speakerphone. I was in Corner Brook for the weekend. My family member and himself had her on speakerphone while I was listening. And she said, no, you don't require our services anymore. And he said, well, what do you mean? You've detoxed for 3 days. That's all you're going to get for cocaine. So the other family member chimed in and said, no, that's not what he was told yesterday. So basically, she took him in because he had no place safe to go. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that she only gave him a place to stay because she wanted to keep him clean. She couldn't keep him. There's been a lot of history, and obviously, so I won't go on about that. So I then proceeded to call and spoke to the RN that was in charge there that day on Saturday. And she had absolutely no empathy, no compassion. I said, what do you mean he can't be detoxed after 3 days? Yeah, she said, and he can't come here because he has no place to live. I said, you can't be serious. I said, he needs to get in there to detox and he needs to get some services because he's willing to go. He wants to go to rehab, so on and so forth. So I called her, spoke to her, and once I didn't tell her I was an RN. And so once I told her I was an RN, her tune changed a bit. And she got a little bit more agreeable, I guess. But she said, basically, I said, so what do we do? I said, so what's going to happen now is that he has to go back to staying with a buddy who we know he's going to use once he goes there. I was out of town until Monday. So I said, what do we do? So she gave us some resources. Doorways, not open on the weekends. 811, yeah, he called that. They gave him a number to a on-call social worker for placement for that night and the next night until at least I could get home to see what I could do to help. And then I said, so what's going to happen? And my exact words to her was, what's going to happen is that now he's going to use. Well, she said if he uses again, he can call again because it won't be within the 3-day period of detox. So he can call again. And at this point, I was irate. I said, you have got to be kidding me. You're telling me as a nurse. And she said, I'm not telling him to use, but because he hasn't used since Thursday, he no longer requires our services. So I was like, okay, then I need to speak to your manager. Manager's off on the weekend, so she gave me your number. I left a message. She did call me back yesterday. She was excellent to deal with, the manager of the recovery center. She called me back, apologized for the experience, asked me a lot of questions, and listened to me, was empathetic, and tried to give me some direction. By this time, I was in St. John's yesterday to pick my son up. Well, guess what? He's used again, so he's not. I wanted to take him to doorways. So he used again. So he slept all day yesterday. He was. So I said, okay, here we are. We know this is going to happen. I'm not putting the onus on this woman, on this the person in charge there, like the manager. It's not on her. But I know, and she told me point blank, that basically one of the biggest issues down there in the recovery center is staffing, which as a nurse, I understand. I mean, I get that, but that doesn't help my son. So she told me, tell him to call back again tomorrow, because I knew he was after using. Myself and my son had a long talk last night. He called 8:30 this morning. They told him to call back at 12 o'clock today, but he was likely not to get bed today. So I called the nurse practitioner that I spoke to yesterday and the manager and left voicemails. I haven't gotten a response yet from either one of them. He will call back at 12, so hopefully he will get a bed. So then, of course, she did give me some resources, and doorways was one of them. And, of course, I couldn't get him to doorways because now he's after using again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a nasty cycle. And, the rules are the rules, but the rules don't make any sense because the likelihood of an addict using is quite high. So if there's extended amount of detox days, I'll add to it. Once you get in a detox, whether it be detox at home or you get in one of these detox beds, then the lag time between that and actually getting into rehab is so lengthy that after the detox initially has been completed, the likelihood once again of going right back to the drug of choice is the percentage is enormous. 100%.
And that's the thing, is that, the reason why I want to get him in is to get him in the system so I can talk to a social worker. I can have everything in one place, talk to a social worker. I have some ideas of my own that will hopefully help him. Like, we are actually, again, looking at out-of-province care. And believe it or not, and I'm going to say this, I'm not looking at paying again because I can't afford to. I'm a retired RN. I'm not a millionaire. These places like Homewood and stuff, and out-of-province referral, he has to go through all the loops, all the places, and you probably know this from talking to other callers, that, he has to exhaust all the avenues here first. Well, guess what? It's going to take 6 to 12 weeks at least to get him in. He needs more than a 4-week program because on top of his addiction, he has severe mental health issues in regards to trauma of the past 15 years. He's willing to go. So we got to strike while the iron is hot. I've advocated for my son. I've advocated for my patients my whole career. I've advocated for my friends and family members, whoever I can help. But you know what? I need someone to advocate for me. I need someone to advocate for me after what I'm after giving to this province, and to get a slap in the face like I have my son. And yes, he has to be willing. He's willing to go. We're looking at a faith-based, a year-long program in New Brunswick. That's what I'm trying to arrange for him now. And, I mean, at this point, it's come to Jesus. I don't care what helps him. But, I mean, he can't get help in this province. He can't. And we're being completely let down. And you know what? I need someone to start advocating for me. Again, I've given my whole life to nursing. My whole life to this province. And when I'm trying to get help for my son, I can't get it. I've contacted Tom Osborne, Premier Fury. I worked alongside him as a doctor. I've sent him messages. I've called my MHA. This was all last year. I didn't call again this time because you know what? I have no faith left in anybody.
Well, Wanda, we can help play the role of advocate and champion on your behalf. Now, change comes very slowly when we talk about government, but I think the recognition of how things are working in this country and in this province regarding addiction to whatever substance, drugs or alcohol or gambling or food or whatever it is, we're falling behind. And I think they recognize that, but it's the lack of progress that's been made here. Whether we need more addiction recovery beds, whether we need more detox beds, whether we need another rehab like Humberwood or U-Turn concerns, what have you.
Yes.
We see and understand the issue, but very little is changing. Just because of the time on the clock, and as a first-timer, we certainly welcome your call. I'm sorry to hear what's happening to your family, and I wish you nothing but the best, but we'll keep these issues on the front burner. Hopefully we can be part of the impetus for change. And of course, I'm not trying to say that we've got any sort of enormous power on this program, but when we have these discussions on the public airwaves, it has to seep into the hearts and the minds of the decision makers, has to seep into the hearts and the minds of people on the 8th floor.
I hope so.
I wish you nothing but the best. Please stay in touch. Let me know how things are going.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Let's see here. Let's take a break. Shelter standards next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the Mayor of Lab City. That's Belinda Adams. Good morning, Mayor Adams. You're on the air.
Thank you, Patty. Apologies, I was going to call in earlier this morning there, but it's been busy, as you can well imagine. So I just want to give a little update on the town of Labrador City because people have been inquiring and we're trying to be as transparent as we can for sure. So currently we've got the power from Quebec when we tapped into. So the megawatts are holding their own, so we're managing the town. We'd like to keep everybody on the power. Right now we're estimating about 20 residents not on power right now, and they're working through that, and as well as our mall and our Walmart and our Canadian Tire, which, as you can imagine, are essential to our community to get through the next few days. So we are working through that, no issues at all. Thank you to the Hydro and the province of Quebec for helping us through that. From a community standpoint, our neighbours, the town of Wabush, obviously haven't got the power, as everybody can read and hear, but we've reached out to them, anything they need. The community's been solid as usually, from the church groups putting up dinners and lunches for the people in Wabush with no power, from the industry, from the Iron Company of Canada reaching out to help us through that. Showers obviously are important, so from a shower perspective or water from the town, we've set up for water for people to come get their water from the town of Labrador City through our hoses and group, from the recreation department, so they can come get their water. From that perspective, it's very huge. The message, I think, one of the things we really need to get out, I know I'm stressed for time, but the message that really needs to get out is we really need to be careful on our megawatts and what was supplied from us. There's a limited amount. The town has done an extremely good job since last night managing that, whether it's turn off your lights, limit the amount of hot water you use by showering less, using your dishwasher, that kind of thing. You hear some comments around the town this morning based on the fact that, I see McDonald's open, I see the gas station open. It's a little bit like when COVID-19 hit and everybody panic buys a little bit. Like for the residents to realize that it's power age at this point, and it's steady on the pulse for the town of Labrador City to make sure we get there, and we will be fine. But we are trying to manage the business sector as well as the residential sector to maintain that power. So when you see, McDonald's is open to serving coffee, but I got to turn my light off, we all just need to be kind and respect that we're trying to keep both towns open, but we got our finger on the pulse to manage that piece, because we need to manage it to the point where if we have to reach out to the business, which we've done already, and try to manage that piece. So if we need to shut down some business or alternate hours or that kind of thing, we will. Because if we don't, the next thing we'll have to do is we'll have to, likely, from what we understand, like we may have to take some things off grid that we'll have to rotate certain areas and that kind of thing. Again, I don't want to bother Hydro at this point to see what that looks like yet. Not that I don't want to bother. When they're ready to do that, they'll be able to do that for us, I guess is the best way to put it. But right now, we're just trying to manage all that piece because we do want people to work. We don't want people to be not working and that kind of thing. And restaurants may be important for the town of Wabush for someone to come get a meal. So we're trying to manage that, what we need versus want and what's essential. And the biggest thing for this town now is to be solid in taking care of the most vulnerable, and that means people without power. And if we look at it could be someone who's on oxygen who's vulnerable, who needs power to get that oxygen and reach out to hospitals. So we work with the hospital as well as that, and what can we provide as a community. So a lot of people have stepped up, from our emergency response type of plan. We have schools there with showers and kitchens, so that's the stuff we're looking into. So we just want to assure the residents that we're doing everything we can, but we really need them to play their part as well as the businesses play their part on doing that. So if you see somebody that's, goodness, the business is open, it's okay. If you see someone in next door neighbor that's still got maybe lights on for a family reunion on their tree, it's okay to kind of knock on the door and say, did you see this? Because not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody reads the social media. There may be a reason they're working, they don't get it. So just everybody coming together, it's coming together wonderfully from a community aspect for Labrador City to pull together and in times like this and get it done. So that's where we're to as a community. I'd like to thank everybody who stepped up from it. It's been very important and very good. We have our landfill now that we're getting on generator power to get the scales back and working. Your garbage will be picked up. So far, if there's anything different that changed from that, we'll let you know. So, landfill. I think that's it, Patty, from a rough estimate.
Yeah, no problem. And that's important information. So if the normal power availability, we'll say, is 100%, what capacity are we running at? 60%?
Right now, that's what we're guessing is about 60%. But if you look at it, it's about like what we can pull from, what I can understand from Hydro is what we can pull from the Fermat when they tied us in, Fermat Quebec when they tied us in, from between 10 and 50 megawatts. So right now we're not up to that capacity. But again, this morning as everybody started going back to their regular business and coming out of their house and going to work, and the businesses pick up and say, okay, I'm a garage, I can keep going, I can keep my welding machines going, I can arc air, I can do all that stuff. It's slowly wrapping up, and that's why we got to keep our finger on the pulse. And Hydro's been phenomenal in keeping us updated on that.
And we appreciate the update here. Thanks a lot, Mayor Adams.
You're very welcome.
Take care. Bye-bye. Belinda Adams is the Mayor of Lab City. Final word this morning goes to line number 3. Lisa, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. Thanks for having me on. My name's Lisa Blanford. I'm an Inuit harvester under Nunatsiavut Labrador, and I've been a spokesperson for a group of Inuit harvesters who have been advocating for their communal inshore quota allocations since the end of April. So today we have a grave concern again about the cod moratorium, with the news of the moratorium being lifted. The stock is in the cautious zone. The science is weak, so we believe that the approach should have also been cautious and start with the inshore before allowing offshore allocations. Allowing offshore to 6% of the TAC of the cod opens the door again for companies to unleash their offshore factory freezer trawlers to go after indigenous allocations, and indigenous is the spirit of communal allocations, which is meant for community people. So we feel again that there's an injustice giving 6% to offshore just opens the door again to come after indigenous allocations. So we have harvesters in Nunatsiavut who want their inshore fishery. The Nunatsiavut government, the Lands and Natural Resources, the mandate is to sustainable manage and develop land and natural resources to maximize benefit for the Labrador Inuit. The employment, we depend heavily on the inshore fisheries. Now, we have an issue here with the cod because we don't have a plant that's willing to take it. We have harvesters that are in our Inuit communities that want to harvest cod. There is a plant in McCovey. The cod is in the harbors. So, we want to land these resources, but the stakeholders involved in Labrador also need to be willing to work with the inshore to keep it alive.
Yeah. So when you say that the stock is in the cautious zone, and talking about cautious increase in the total allowable catch, doesn't it come across as a relatively cautious play because the total allowable catch last year was 13,000 tons, only moved off to 18,000, so a pretty minimal increase.
Yes, I don't have any issue with the amount. What our concern is that we're all fighting for our inshore fisheries, especially here in Nunatsiavut. We have communal allocations, and all of our communal allocations are moving to the offshore. So we're trying to build our inshore fishery, just as our government says it's the most viable option for employment and economic opportunities in the Labrador Inuit settlement area. So, if we don't have anywhere to land it, who do you think is going to carry the Nunatsiavut allocation, the 3.3% of cod that they have? Is going to go to an offshore dragger. Now, and the people are not going to avail to the benefits. The communities are not avail to the benefits, and this is the advocating that we've been fighting for now since the end of April. We're not just with shrimp, we're with all species. We need our stakeholders here in Labrador to understand this future of inshore fishery is very important, viable, sustainable income for our communities. We need this. We need this income for our community. We need our services. You know, I just listened to some people in other regions of the province that are suffering. Well, we're suffering really bad up here. We have no services. We have no treatment center here. We have no homeless shelter. We have no counselors. The list goes on and on and on, that if we had built our inshore fishery, which we can, that's what this group is advocating for, to maximize benefit for inshore Nunavut, Labrador, for community and people. And we feel allowing the offshore at this time is not being cautious, it's just opening up the door to allow these indigenous allocations to be harvested, not by the people, but by offshore companies, and that's what we're trying to prevent.
I appreciate that. You've had the last word. We've just hit 12 o'clock, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, we are indeed out of time, but we will pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Openline. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.